across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
There you are. Good afternoon and welcome to Drive Time right here on Talk. Stand by for 3 thrilling hours of news, views and topical debate. I'm your host, Kevin O'Sullivan, and I'll be with you all the way to 7 o'clock. Get involved. Get on the phone and call me on 03444991000, or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same number, and I absolutely promise to play your message out. It is Friday, May the 1st. Here's what's coming up. Horror on the streets, another terrorist attack highly likely, but as always, anti-Semitism gets a free pass from the government as Starmer and his gormless gang spew the same old meaningless cliches while doing the square root of nothing. Should we ban pro-Palestine marches? No. Should we ban Jew hate marches? Of course we should. But against the backdrop of their party's history of anti-Semitism, Labour's cabinet crew seem reluctant to confront the rancid truth that pro-Palestinian marches are Jew hate marches. What would you do about these putrid protests that slither snake-like through our cities week after week? 03444991000. And where is all this Nazi-style anti-Semitism coming from? Who is fueling it? On BBC Question Time last night, Reform UK's Zia Youssef pointed the finger firmly at Zach Polanski and his lunatic far-left Green Party. Is Zia Youssef right? 03444991000. And breaking news, as I just said to Ian Collins, for the first time in his poisonous political life, Polanski has just apologised for supporting a tweet accusing the courageous coppers who tackled and arrested the Golders Green stabbing suspect of police brutality. Outrageous thing to do. Even Zach the Prat realised he'd gone too far. 03444991000. In other news, town hall tyranny continues apace as a fifth of councils slap astonishingly illiberal bans on shouting and swearing in public. Why don't they just leave us alone? 03444991000. And as the Anyone But Ange campaign gains momentum, wannabe Prime Minister Angela Rayner is hit by reports that earlier this week she got steaming drunk in Parliament's Strangers Bar, staggered into a door and broke it. That story of heavy drinking was confirmed by the Mail's Dan Hodges. Doesn't seem to be much doubt it happened. But is it Angela's drinking habits that we should be worried about? Or should we be a whole lot more worried about her intellectual bandwidth and grasp of basic politics? I'll show you some film that indicates that really we do have a lot to be anxious about when it comes to Ms Rayner should she move into number 10 Downing Street. 03444991000. Oh, and that guy who doesn't seem to realise he's no longer running the country, Tony Blair, he wants to scrap state pensions. Great. When is that old fossil going to shut his trap? 03444991000. All that and so much more. So don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Friday afternoon together. And right off the bat, let's go over to my first guest. He is journalist and broadcaster, Jonathan Sakadoty. He's also Jewish, so I'm sure he's got a lot to say about the events of this week. Well, welcome, Jonathan.
Hi, Kevin. How are you doing?
I'm very good. Your overarching thoughts about this week and about the feeble response of the government, the classically feeble response of this socialist government. You'll be aware that yesterday the Jewish newspaper, they did a fantastic front page that was both funny and sickening. And it said, it's BS. Well, what the hell, I'll say it. Bullshit bingo. and it had a collection of all the cliches that the Jewish community have to put up with. This is not who we are as a country. We stand with the Jewish community. An attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. Hate has no place in British society. This horrific act has no justification. Blah, 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 blah. The joke, though, Jonathan, is this. If you put all those cliches together, hey presto, you've got Keir Starmer's speech in Downing Street yesterday, right?
Yeah, too true. I think that it's so obvious, really, to anyone with a brain that these statements that politicians make after these sorts of incidents, and it's not just for Jews, it's virtually any terror event, are utterly meaningless. In fact, they have these policies prepared in place. I remember when there was one of the London terror attacks some years ago and I was covering it, they had like a rally pre-prepared in Trafalgar Square. I remember going there and the press team of the London Mayor's office gave me all the literature and all the press releases. And I said, you guys got this together quickly. And they said, no, we've got a file on it ready to go.
Sorry. If I didn't laugh, I'd cry. But you know what I mean.
It's literally a file on how to calm down a population when it's been attacked, with all these platitudes of you know, love being stronger than hate, and bring out the balloons and the idiot playing John Lennon, Imagine, and everything will get better. But you know who's proven immune to this? Jews. And you know why we've proven immune to it, and why when they turned up in Golders Green with the same platitudes, be it Mark Rowley or Sarah Sackman or Keir Starmer, who chose instead to go on a motorcade into a car park where there weren't any actual Jews who could speak to him directly, it's because we've seen this too much, and we know that Islamic jihadism, which is an underlying cause of a lot of this hatred and these attacks and this violence, it really wants us dead. We know it because it's been practiced again and again and again on us around the world, whether it's here in the UK, whether it's in Israel. We know that the far left has joined them in that pursuit, and we know that nobody from those quarters, at any rate, seems to be taking it seriously enough to stop it happening to us again and again. And that's why that's who you saw on the streets in Golders Green giving those people a hard time. A pretty polite hard time, I would say. They weren't intimidating or scary. They were just making themselves heard. They were telling their elected politicians or representatives from the police or whatever it might be just how disappointing and disgusting this all is. And the reason it's disappointing and disgusting is we are Brits. We're British people. We deserve
exactly what I always say.
Protection and defence, and it's irrelevant if we're Jewish or not Jewish. But what's most insulting, in my opinion, is when they just throw money at us. They say, you know, here's another 28 million for your security. Go take care of it yourselves. Here's a brilliant organisation you guys have set up to defend yourselves because we're not very good at it. Here's some money. Get some new CCTV. That is not how you fix the killing of Jews, the targeting of Jews.
Well, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, her word salad contribution to the narrative after the horror in Golders Green was that we've got to get to the root of where this comes from. Where does this anti-Semitism comes from? Well, Shabana, two things. Have a look at some of the elements of your own party and also the Green Party. Zia Youssef from Reform UK was on Question Time last night. Have a listen to what he had to say.
I think the levels of anti-Semitism in this country now, the levels of extremism are intolerable. But I think it is important we understand what time it is in this country. We now have a well-organised force in politics, and in some cases is polling second in national polls, that frankly has become a poisonous vessel for extremism and anti-Semitism.
He's referring to the Green Party, Jonathan, and it is true. I mean, Zach Polanski, for the first time in his career, in his poisonous political life, has just an hour ago apologised. He's never done that before. He did actually say sorry for liking those tweets that suggested that the courageous coppers who tackled that lunatic in Golders Green, for all they knew, he had a bomb on his back. He had a big backpack on. Zach Polanski liked tweets suggesting that they were guilty of police brutality. Even he, Zach the Prat, has realised he's gone too far and he has apologised. But the Green Party I mean, I do think they may well be the festering epicenter of this rising tide of vile Jew hatred. There's a lot of it in the Green Party. I don't want to go into the local elections because we are, as a journalist, you'll understand we're impaired and we're not allowed to discuss this. But generalising on a general basis, I think the Green Party is a very poisonous source of Jew hatred.
Well, I don't want to break any rules, but certainly, you know, there have been stories in the papers recently that people can see for themselves about suspensions and what have you. But I won't say it's just the Greens. You know, it may be the most obvious and perhaps scary manifestation at the moment, but there are plenty of parties which have harboured within them people who hate Jews. And there are plenty of Jew haters that aren't in the Green Party. The Green Party, you know, with its embrace of Islamism for votes seems to be one potential place where we can see that manifested, but we saw that in other times in other parties. We've seen it in the Labour Party. We saw Jeremy Corbyn in his time. You know, sadly, we Jews don't have any shortage of crazies who hate us and want to express it out loud, want to express it through politics, want to express it through ideology, want to express it through religion, want to express it through violence and death. This is something that we're used to. Unfortunately as well, it's something that Britons are increasingly used to, even if they're not Jewish. It's something that people across Europe are used to. You know, we've seen a lot in the news about the arson attacks on Jewish locations, like two synagogues, like the ambulances, like a former Jewish charity premises, etc., etc. But we see less, for example, about the burnings of churches around Europe and the West, which have been going on at an alarming rate over recent years. They're almost never reported, but sometimes you'd have to ask yourself, I wonder who's burning down churches or attacking churches with arson attacks. Maybe some of them have the same motivations as those who are attacking synagogues and Jews with arson.
Well, let's talk about this, because that was you're quite right, of course. I'm not just saying that the Green Party are solely responsible for anti-Semitism in this country, but I think they're playing a significant role in this vile upturn in Jew hatred. Upturn is an understatement, to say the least. There's been an explosion of it. They're playing a role. We must also remember that there's homegrown anti-Semitism, and plenty of anti-Semites who are British born and bred. But what I want to ask you is, do you fear that we're importing anti-Semitism? Because this church burning across Europe, we know who's doing this. It's Islamists. Now, we are importing thousands and thousands of young men from Muslim Islamic countries where Jew hatred is almost a way of life. It's endemic. They come here, and we have our problems. I'm going to cover a story in just a little while that a guy who came across on a small boat, a Kuwaiti, has just been found guilty of launching a terror attack on the Israeli embassy, trying to climb over the wall with knives. He wanted to exact revenge.
You know what's extraordinary about him,
for
Kevin?
Gaza. Yeah, go on.
Like that guy, Abdullah al-Badri, 34-year-old from Kuwait. He's such a loser that he literally came in on a small boat, claimed refugee status, and then accidentally deported himself by getting into a lorry, which he thought was going to take him to Manchester, and it took him back to France.
And then he came back, didn't he? He came back on
the country twice as an illegal, and then they put him up in the Crown Plaza in Basingstoke, which sounds all right for free, but because he messed it up the first time, they kicked him out because he was like a sort of double offender, and I'm not quite sure what those rules are, but apparently you can't get a free hotel twice. So it's good to know there's at least some justice in that peculiar system. But I mean, this guy is the epitome of stupidity, but also the epitome
I accept
hatred.
that. Yeah, but my point is, he's indicative of the kind of person that we are importing in their thousands by allowing them to come across the channel in small boats. They mostly come from Islamic countries, and then we just let them in and put them in the Crown Plaza, and they can do what they will. Now, of course, he's a loser, but does it worry you, or do you feel we are importing anti-Semitism?
No, I don't feel it. It's clear for everyone to see. I mean, the point is that if you import people legally or illegally, you allow them to be here, who come from countries where culturally they're quite open about their hatred of Jews. They're quite open in many Muslim countries. You know, I know this from many friends who come from those countries. They're quite open in their day-to-day slurs against Jews. And if it rains, many of them will tell you, they say, oh, it's the Jews' fault. And it's a general curse in their language, in their culture, to blame Jews for things. But that sort of, you know, casual anti-Jewishness, that kind of casual blaming of the Jews, it points to something much broader, which is religiously and culturally, there's plenty of opportunity within Islam to hate Jews. You know, it is in there in the Quran. So that doesn't mean necessarily that every Muslim I find in Great Britain, say, hates Jews. Maybe some of them do. But it means that if you're going to import people from backwards cultures, backwards societies, they may even legitimately be refugees who are seeking refuge from something quite dreadful going on where they are. But the fact that something dreadful is going on where they are may be indicative of the fact that it's a place of great upheaval, a place where Islam has played a very big influence in their negative ideas about Jews. And we saw it also with that guy that Keir Starmer, you remember, he tweeted he was delighted to welcome into the UK. He'd been given British citizenship by the Conservatives, ridiculously. When he was released from prison in Egypt, this guy who'd written outrageous things online for all to see was welcomed into this country. Keir Starmer said he was delighted to welcome him here. So, you know, we are demonstrably welcoming in people who have culturally based, religiously based ideological prejudices against Jews, which they are then demonstrably acting out, like in the case of Abdullah al-Badri.
Let me ask you this. I think one of the problems is we see this feeble response time and time again from Labour, from the Labour government, from Starmer and his cabinet crew. Same old claptrap, you know, no place for hatred in this country, etc., etc. When they should be taking action. I think they should be closing down the Iranian embassy, particularly after they called on all British Iranians to sacrifice their lives for the tyrants in Tehran the other day. They should be prescribing the IRGC. They should be prescribing the Muslim Brotherhood, and they should be thinking about taking some very serious measures against these pro-Palestinian marches. I actually, because of the libertarian in me, I'm wary of banning these marches, but I think we have to understand, having been to see them, they're not really pro-Palestine marches, they're Jew-hate marches, and if they're Jew-hate marches, they should be banned. I'm against banning a genuine pro-Palestine march. I don't necessarily agree with the cause, but that isn't the point. But I am for banning Jew-hate marches, which is what these pro-Palestine marches are.
So I agree with you that many of them are indeed that, but I would also just try to persuade you a little bit further than that, which is to say that a large part of mainstream Palestinian liberation logic or movement is anti-Israel in nature. So you can say that, you know, some people will say the Palestinians are a people who deserve self-determination and a land, but a lot of mainstream Palestinian politicians, certainly those in Hamas and Fatah, will tell you that, you know, their entire raison d'etre is resistance of the Jewish state of Israel. And so in and of itself, standing up for the Palestinian cause, waving those flags that you can see there of the, you know, people call it the Palestinian flag, it's the PLO flag, the Palestine Liberation Organization flag, which is the flag of Yasser Arafat's terrorist organization that blew up many people over the years. So even the act of standing in solidarity with Palestinians, if not intentionally on the part of many of the young people you might see seduced by this cause today, is in itself, I would say, inherently quite problematic. And certainly when it manifests in this way on the streets of London or elsewhere in the UK, which is a deliberately provocative, dominating, obstructive, nuisance sort of way, it's there not to demonstrate, you know, some sort of virtuous solidarity with some people. It's almost always designed to threaten and intimidate other people from being in the same place if they don't agree with you. And nobody has a right to do that. That's not freedom of speech. That's bullying and intimidation, whoever does it.
As course, I mean, I've had a lot of debates about this, and I wouldn't die on the hill about my standpoint. I'll go with what you say, Jonathan. One last question. Got to move on swiftly, so if you could be reasonably brief. But I heard Stephen Pollard, the former editor of the Jewish Chronicle, on Talk earlier today, talking to Alex Phillips. When he was editor of the Jewish Chronicle, he had threats on his life from various Islamic nutcases, to the extent that for 2 years he had to have 24/7 police protection. He said to Alex this morning, I feel much less safe now than I did then. He said, I feel in more danger now than I did when for 2 years I had to have police protection. Do you, as a Jew, Jonathan, feel unsafe similarly to Stephen Pollard?
Well, of course I do, and many Jews do, but let me say something else. As a Brit, I feel unsafe. The national terrorism alert level has been raised. Not the Jewish one, the national one, the British one. These people have killed not just Jews, actually killing Jews in the UK is quite new for them. They've killed in Manchester Arena, they've killed on London Bridge, they've killed plenty of non-Jews. This is not a Jewish problem, though it often manifests in the killing and targeting of Jews. And that's why I would say to everyone listening to Talk, listen to those Friday sermons that Talk published a couple of years ago from mosques in the UK. They do have a genocidal intent often towards Jews, but they also don't have a lot to say that's great about non-believers of their faith who aren't Jewish. And I think the threat is great to all of us. So I would say, yes, I am afraid for our safety, but I'm afraid for all of Britain's safety when there is a jihadist terrorist threat.
Jonathan, great to have you on the show. Come on again soon. Thank you so much. Jonathan Sakadoty, there, journalist and broadcaster. 03444 499 1000. Do you feel unsafe? Jonathan's right, isn't he? I mean, if you're Jewish people feel incredibly unsafe, but given that the terror threat has been raised to severe, which means there is highly likely to be another awful incident, another horrific incident like what we just saw in Golders Green. Do you feel unsafe? Let me know what you think. 03444 499 1000. Next up, we'll talk to social policy analyst Dr. Rakib Aysen about the same subject, so stick around.
And they sent us a picture that made me feel so ashamed. We look like hoarders.
Chris Marshall! Yeah, I'm actually recovering from an accident right now.
You've landed loose today, haven't you?
Yeah, don't shake the arm, Chris, too much.
Emily!
With Danny Boyle, who's like the maddest director ever. He's got so much energy. He's like you.
Is Starmer fueling anti-Semitism?
I don't think he's doing anything to deal with anti-Semitism. The attempt to gaslight the British people and the Jewish community is appalling.
This has to stop. It's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's go straight over to my next guest, Dr. Rakib Ahsan, social policy analyst. Hi, Rakib.
Hi, Kevin. How are you?
I'm okay. Well, you're a social policy analyst. What the hell is going on in this country right now? What is this anti-Semitism problem? Where do you think it's coming from, and what can we do about it?
Well, it's a real we have many problems in the country, Kevin, as you know, and I think one of the real problems that we have is what I'd consider to be the rise of anti-Semitic terrorism, and I think that this has been a risk for some time. If you look especially within British Muslim communities, as we know, there's elevated levels of anti-Semitism. This goes well beyond hostility towards the State of Israel. We're talking about anti-Jewish conspiratorial beliefs, especially comes to these conspiracy theories over power and control over the banking system, the media, entertainment, and other spheres of life. And also, in some cases, Holocaust trivialization and denial. So I think that naturally, I think there's been there's an intensification of anti-Semitism after October the 7th. And the subsequent bombardment of Gaza, and also the illegal expansion of settlements in the West Bank. But Kevin, what we're talking about here, we're talking about something broader than that, a broader anti-Jewish hatred. And I think that we saw the threat of that anti-Semitic Islamist terrorism with the attack on Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester, which 2 people were killed. We've had a series of arson attacks targeting Jewish sites in London. But well before all of this, we've had people who have been jailed, Islamist terrorists being jailed for plotting to target Jewish sites, including synagogues in their home cities, cities such as Birmingham. So this has been a risk for some time. And now, unfortunately, we can see that the risks are going to materialise in real life in the shape of full-blown terror attacks.
And what do you think should be done about it? I mean, the problem so far with this government, with Keir Starmer and his cabinet crew, as it is every time with this lot, is you have an atrocity, a terrorist incident like in Manchester, like in Golders Green, and they just step in front of the cameras and spew the usual cliches, you know, hate like this won't be tolerated, an attack on the Jewish community is an attack on us all, there's no place for anti-Semitism. I mean, they're all very virtuous. Yeah, but it doesn't achieve anything. What the Jewish community are looking for, in fact, I think what we're all looking for is some concrete steps that might actually do something about this explosion of anti-Semitism, which is beginning to reach extremely alarming levels. What should we do, Rakib?
Well, where to start? I think first we have to make the point that the person who's been charged for attempted murder over the Golders Green double stabbing attack.
Let's be a bit careful here. Don't forget he's being charged, so we have to be careful.
So he's been. I think that the point to make here is that this particular individual, it has been reported that he had been referred to prevent.
Hang on, Rakib, let's just say, I have to be very, very careful here for legal reasons. Let's just say he's from Somalia. He was actually a British citizen. I would suggest that he is symptomatic, indicative of the thousands of young men that we let into the country every single year, thousands and thousands of them, from Islamic countries where Jew hatred is pretty much a way of life. I think that may be a problem. We are importing. That isn't to say we don't have homegrown anti-Semitism, don't get me wrong, but our migrant population are coming from countries where Jew hatred is not uncommon, shall I put it that way?
No, absolutely. And I think it's a problem that it has been imported over time from parts of the world which have especially elevated levels of anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish hatred. And I think that's contributed towards the wearing down of our social fabric. And I have to say that many people, especially people of more progressive liberal disposition, have presented modern Britain as a paragon of diversity, a flourishing multi-faith democracy. And that portrayal doesn't really hold anymore. In my view. And I think the real concern here is that the floodgates have opened when it comes to anti-Semitic terrorism, which is specifically targeting British Jewish communities.
Yeah, and here's something that I think we need to think about. Look, the right to criticise Israel, you know, it should be universal. If you don't like what Israel's doing or you don't like Netanyahu, then, of course, whether you're Jewish, you're left-wing, or right, you should have the right to criticise Israel. But this cloak that these extreme left-wingers tend to put up, which is always, I'm not anti-Semitic, and I don't, it's nothing to do with me hating Jews, I just reserve the right to criticise Israel. It was like a chorus for Jeremy Corbyn and his gang. I think we have to start to be a little careful about this. It is becoming a shield, I think, for too many left-wing people for their actual anti-Semitism.
Well, I think I'd make the point that, for example, holding unfavourable feelings towards the Netanyahu-led government in the State of Israel, that's becoming an increasingly mainstream position in Britain, Kevin. But I think the problem is that all too often, in my view, and I speak as someone who's a strong supporter of the Palestinian cause, that anti-Israelism all too often it spirals into hatred towards British Jewish communities. And I think that there's many people that actually struggle to make the differentiation in their own minds when it comes to approaching this particular matter. And I think that's a very serious problem. And I think that if people are, in my view, understandably, they have perfectly legitimate concerns over the behavior of the Israeli government, they shouldn't hold British Jewish people accountable for that. That is just deeply wrong.
That's exactly right. Very good point. Let me just, last question. I just want to fire at you some potential concrete moves that the government could make that you may feel would have an effect or you may feel wouldn't. First of all, prescribe, ban the IRGC, ban the Muslim Brotherhood, potentially close down the Iranian embassy, because earlier this week the Iranian embassy called for all Iranians in Britain to lay down their lives for the Tehran tyrant's cause, and to potentially ban the pro-Palestine marches. Those four things I just said, would they help?
It's hard to say, Kevin, and I'll explain why. I just feel that increasingly, when you look at these kind of attacks, they come across as quite lone wolf. It's not people attached to particular organisations. Now, of course, I think they would make the point that Palestine Action is a proscribed terrorist organisation in the UK right now. So many people be wondering, well, if they're proscribed, how come
the IRGC and the Muslim Brotherhood?
I think some people would find that quite puzzling. They'll find it to be an inconsistency.
Me included.
We have ISIS and Palestine Action on the list of proscribed organisations by the Home Office. So I think there's some inconsistencies there. But I think the one thing we have to ultimately readjust in terms of how we actually counter terrorist activity in the country and the threat of it. Because before, when you look at Islamist terrorism in particular, it tended to be people who had pledged allegiance to a particular organisation. They might have been a member of a specific organisation. And I think in some ways they made it that bit easier in terms of monitoring the threat. So if it's lone wolf, quite low level, this isn't about detonating a bomb and purchasing all the ingredients. Quite low level, using knives in a stabbing attack. That's actually quite difficult to monitor. It's quite difficult to prevent.
Yeah.
So I think that we have to really understand that how the terror threat is changing, the nature of it, and how we can control that, and how we can prevent these kind of attacks happening in the future.
Well said, Rakib. Always great to have you on the show. Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Rakib Asen, their social policy analyst. Next up, we're going to talk to Kevin Foster, former immigration minister. We're going to go back to that small boat migrant who attacked the Israeli embassy. He is symptomatic, I think, of the problem. We are importing Jew hatred. That next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's go over to former Immigration Minister Kevin Foster. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin. How are you?
I'm very well. I want to talk to you about this story. A guy today was found guilty of trying to stage a kind of crazed terrorist knife attack on the Israeli embassy. He was a Kuwaiti. His name was Abdullah al-Badri, 34 years old. He had arrived in Britain just a few weeks earlier on a small boat. Actually 16 days before that on a small boat. He's not what you might call a super criminal, because apparently he came across on a small boat before that, and when he got into Dover, Folkestone, he got on the wrong coach, went the wrong way and went back across the channel, kind of deported himself. So he got on another small boat and came back illegally. 16 days later, he was caught climbing over the wall of the Israeli embassy. He was planning to stage a crazed knife attack to exact revenge, he said, for Gaza. Now, my question is why are we importing people like this? I want to ask you, do you think we need to really tighten up the process of how we let these people into the country, because we're clearly basically letting these migrants, thousands and thousands of young men from Islamic countries, we're pretty much letting most of them in, no questions asked. And this guy went on to do this. We need to tighten up security about who we let into the country, don't we? Because we're importing anti-Semitism.
Yeah, there's definitely a need to take steps to secure the border, although it's worth noting that from what I'm reading of the case, the Home Office actually did identify this man from his previous time in the UK about 4 years earlier, and actually had moved to say that because he'd applied for asylum before, he couldn't do it again, and this had to be a further submission, and actually removed him from the asylum hotel. Now, the issue is, what they didn't do was then move to actually remove him from the country. And this is where a lot of this really starts to come down to things like what our tolerance is on returning people to countries like Kuwait. Personally, I don't have a problem with returning someone like this to Kuwait, who's, you know, if he's got a genuine asylum issue, he could easily have made a claim in France. So this is where a lot of this boils down to is when people arrive, what do we do with them next? Particularly if we identify they've already had one crack at the asylum system. They really don't need another one, particularly having come from a safe and democratic country, France. And you said about his attack, yeah, thankfully it wasn't particularly well executed in the fact that he jumped up the fence right next to two armed police officers.
Yeah, he's not a master criminal, there's no doubt about that.
No, and I must say, I do find his story of going back to France deeply unconvincing. The idea he just sort of hitchhiked a lorry and it went to France, that does not sound right, which actually brings some other concerns about how actually he went out of the country and what did he do in that time between coming back.
I think that it's not necessarily him I want to talk about, it's the syndrome. You know, and I can't talk too much about the suspect in the Golders Green horror, but we can say he came from Somalia and became a British citizen. So he was a migrant who was allowed into this country. Thousands and thousands and thousands of mainly young men arrive every year illegally on small boats, and they all hail from Islamic countries where, shall we say, friendliness towards Jewish people, friendliness towards Israel is not common. They come from countries where Jew hatred is almost endemic. And therein lies our problem. And what I would say is we need to really crack down on how we allow these people into the country, because you know what's happening now, Kevin. They're turning up and we're basically saying, here's the Crown Plaza Hotel, I hope you enjoy it. We need to start working out who exactly these people are, because clearly some of them are dangerous anti-Semites. They come from countries where Jew hatred is the norm.
Yeah, it's worth noting, actually, that in some Islamic countries, some of the groups that are legal here, like the Muslim Brotherhood, are actually banned in countries like the UAE. So, you know, it's sometimes worth, in our own mind, just thinking, actually, the whole Islamic world is sometimes a very different place to where Western Europe is. I remember the UAE's foreign minister making that point on one of his visits to London is, you know, some of these groups that are banned in the UAE for extremism are lawful here.
I think the IRGC are banned in the UAE, are banned in most of the Gulf states. You know, you're right. The Muslim Brotherhood and the IRGC, incredibly, are banned by Muslim countries in the Middle East, but not by us. What is that about?
Yeah, it is an odd one. And, you know, we've always had a tolerance of expressing opinions, but we also need to look at where people are going well over into incitement. And, you know, the Iranian regime is not operating, the IRGC is not operating in this country to promote human rights, democracy and freedom of religion. It certainly doesn't promote that in Iran.
No, that's
it's not going to try and promote that here either. And the statements coming out of the embassy this week were deeply worrying, given, you know, some of those people are here under diplomatic immunity as well, given what they can do. I hope the government's considering removing some of them out of the country and reviewing whether, you know, what is the point of having diplomatic relations with a country that then encourages people to do that in our country. It's hard to see what it's gaining. But overall, this all comes back to what we need to do about sorting out the small boat situation. And actually, the case we've just had is an example of someone who had their support removed. And remember, I think I talked about this on Talk recently, that, yeah, okay, remove their support, but what you're doing next? If they're just going to end up staying in the country, that's not much of a success after one of the recent announcements from the government. What we need to look at, countries that have solved this type of problem, USA and Australia, and to a lesser extent, we did it with Albania, where we had people coming on small boats. What was changed? You could no longer make the claims to try and stay here, and you were very likely to be removed very quickly afterwards, with the Albanians working closely with UK law enforcement to do that. If there is the case that people know that they may arrive, they'll be checked, they'll be processed quickly, but then they'll be removed from the United Kingdom. There's a very high chance of that happening. That's the point at which you would start seeing the amount of small boat arrivals dropping quite rapidly. You can see it in the US with a lot of what the Trump administration brought in. You know, it's firmer at the border, processing people quickly, detaining those they wished they needed to, and then removals, and also using all the levers of government to make sure other countries took their citizens back, including famously, you know, Colombia president refusing in the morning, 50% tariff on coffee imposed at lunchtime, and by the afternoon he's sending his own plane to collect the people America wanted to get rid of. Solution, the record low crossings at the border.
Yeah, I mean, gold is green should be a massive wake-up call for this government, but I'm not sure a nuclear bomb would wake this government up. We are in a bad state. Kevin, good to have you on the show, as always. Thank you very much. Kevin Foster, former Tory Immigration Minister there. Next up, there's going to be a fifth. 1 in 5 councils across the country have banned shouting and swearing in public. Now, that's pretty illiberal. Across the country, prohibitions on all sorts of nonsense are becoming the norm. This is an issue of freedom. We'll talk about that next. Stay where you are.
Sent us a picture that made me feel so ashamed. We look like hoarders.
Chris Marshall! Yeah, I'm actually recovering from an accident right now. You've landed loose today, haven't you?
Yeah, don't shake the arm, Chris, too much.
You're with Danny Boyle, who's like the maddest director ever. He's got so much energy. He's like you.
It's
fueling anti-Semitism?
I don't think he's doing anything to deal with anti-Semitism. The attempt to gaslight the British people and the Jewish community is appalling.
This has to stop. It's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
There's a problem in this country. Town hall tyrants. Incredibly, 1 in 5 councils across the country have banned shouting and swearing in public. So if you shout at a friend, "Hey, Johnny," across the road, "you bloody idiot," or something, they're going to nick you. This is unbelievable. This is an attack on freedom. Let's talk to the director of the Campaign for Freedom in Everyday Life, Josie Appleton. Welcome, Josie.
Hello.
Well, first of all, that's very worrying. That's obviously in all sorts of councils. We're talking about 61 councils have introduced these kind of bans on shouting, swearing, shall we say, being boisterous in public. There's nothing wrong with that, if you ask me. If you go to the country, it's become this kind of mosaic of prohibition where stroking ponies has been outlawed, leaving your sunglasses in the sun, even taking a stove, sort of Calagas stove, to the country, have all been banned. This is a kind of erosion of basic liberty, isn't it? These town hall tyrants are crossing the line in a major way. We've got to do something about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that, you know, normally with a criminal law, you target quite precisely some kind of behaviour everyone will recognise as a problem. But with these powers, they're targeting things that most people would think, well, that's quite reasonable. I do that. Or even that's a good thing. So a lot of laws cracking down on busking, for example. Most people like buskers. It's supposed to, you know, cheer people up, and yet you've had buskers who had people around them clapping and cheering being arrested by police. So I think what's happening really is these powers, they're so broad, they allow a single council officer to write a law pretty much overnight, banning anything they don't like. And there's no requirement to go through full council. There are no rights for appeal that really count. So, and the test is very low. It's anything that has a detrimental effect on the quality of life, which could be something you don't like, right? So that's why, you know, left, right and centre, these laws being introduced over the last 10 years, basically.
Yeah, there's one ban, this is my personal favourite, loitering for the purposes of hair braiding or applying henna tattoos. So that would be, I don't know, people who say, do you want your hair braided on the street? So that's been banned. And what this really is, though, isn't it? These councils, and we're not talking just about a few, we're talking about a fifth of all councils. We've got 61 councils at least are prohibiting virtually everything. This is the age of prohibition, not of alcohol, but of everything else. They're basically criminalising everyday behaviour, aren't they?
Absolutely, and I think they've almost drawn them as broadly as possible. You look down them, you think, you've tried to catch everybody in this. So Enfield bans staring, for example, and whistling. Guildford bans shouting.
Staring?
Staring.
Well, hang on, who's bans? There's a council that's banned staring.
Enfield.
What? How do they define that offence? Staring at what?
Well, they include it as part of their street harassment, but it includes whistling and staring. So if you stare at somebody, then it's harassment.
Sorry, I mean, this is hysterically funny, but also extremely worrying and sinister, isn't it?
Absolutely, and another one banned lingering aimlessly without obvious reason.
What's that mean?
Which is loitering, right? So there are several loitering bans, and I mean, I loiter. That's a kind of common thing to want to do in a public space. Lying down, sitting down, sleeping. In the whole of Rother, you can't sleep in public.
In the whole of where? Where?
Rother.
You can't. Okay. No, is that in Kent? Yeah. Is that right? Yeah. How do they justify all of this?
Well, I think they start with something they think is a problem, and then the drafting process just draws it broader and broader. So they maybe think, oh, we have a problem with disorderly behaviour from homeless people, but then rather than criminalising disorderly behaviour from homeless people, they create a law that bans anyone from sleeping, or anyone from sitting down, or anyone from lying down. So I think it's just it's what happens when you give officials blank check powers to make laws. That's not how lawmaking is supposed to happen. You know, it's supposed to happen through democratic chambers where everyone's scrutinising and people are saying, actually, that's not reasonable, and through that kind of back and forth. And you have an unelected officer writing a law. This is kind of what you get. I mean, in some places, they've just got spelling mistakes and things like you banning people from urinating in the whole of the area, but not exempting public toilets, for example. You know, that kind of thing. In theory, you should leave the town centre if you want to go to the loo. So, I mean, but that's what happens if you have law made like this. And I think that it was the government's fault for creating a law, a power that allows councils to write laws.
Yeah, indeed. This is a spokesman for the Local Government Association said, councils need effective powers to tackle antisocial behaviour that can have a serious impact on people's quality of life and on local town centres, parks and high streets. PSPOs are one of the number of tools available, and councils are required to use them proportionately with oversight and democratically elected councillors and consultation with police and communities. Well, that's a hell of a generalisation, isn't it? And you presumably, your organisation has presumably tried to sort of object to this, to take this issue up with these various councils. What is their response?
I mean, yeah, various councils and the government. So we got changes to the statutory guidance a few years ago, which drew much more tightly the grounds on which the orders can be made. So it said that it had to be significant nuisance or harm, and it has to be targeted, proportionate, and all that kind of stuff. The trouble is it's ignored. I mean, it's completely ignored. And the reason for that is there's no appeal rights. If you don't have any way of checking it in court or through a formal process, then it's null and void. I mean, there have been 3 appeals in 12 years, and 3 of those were financed by American pro-life groups. They lose grand a time. You can't appeal it. It's unappealable. So that's why this happens, because there's no process and there's no appeal rights, and it's those things that actually make powers ensure that they're used proportionately. Even though I think the original law is problematic, but the lack of process is deeply problematic.
It's extraordinary. It's highly illiberal. Now, Josie, I feel like challenging some of this claptrap. Where would be, in your view, the most legally dangerous place for me to go and stand on the side of the street and shout?
Well, Guildford. Shouting. I think the most legally dangerous place for you probably would be one of the London boroughs, because they've got private enforcement enforcing them, and they get paid per fine.
Yeah.
So Hillingdon, 10,000 fines last year.
Okay.
And many, many very strange offences. They used to criminalise standing in a group of 2 or more except at a bus stop.
I'll tell you what, Josie, I've got my weekend sorted out now. I'm going to Guildford, and then I'm going to Hillingdon, and I'm going to shout my head off. I might even try the F word, see how I get on. This is ridiculous, though. Keep up the good work. Come on again soon about this. Thank you for coming on. Josie Appleton, Director of the Campaign for Freedom in Everyday Life. What do you think about that? The banning, it's illegal in these boroughs, 61 of them around the country, to shout or stare. It's illegal to stare. 03444991000. Brendan O'Neill next. Stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
In a little while, we'll be talking about Angela Rayner. There's a big campaign to stop her becoming Prime Minister. It's called Anyone But Ange. And she got caught drunk as a skunk in the Strangers Bar in Westminster, according to reports, but they seem to be confirmed. So drunk she staggered into a door and broke the door. But it's not necessarily her drinking habits we should be worried about. I suspect what we should be worried about is her intellectual bandwidth. Is she bright enough to be the Prime Minister? I'll show you some footage that might put a big question mark over that. That in a little while. First of all, though, let's go over to my next guest, deal with some of the big stories of the week. Chief political writer at the Spiked Online website, Brendan O'Neill. Welcome, Brendan.
Hi, Kevin. How's it going?
I'm okay. You've written a very powerful piece in The Spectator about the Golders Green horror, in which you said that Britain is now facing, I think quite rightly in my view, a moral emergency. My question to you, how in your opinion is the government doing in terms of responding to that moral emergency?
Not very well. And in some senses, we're in this moral emergency because of the government and because of the broader establishment, and certainly because of the activist classes and the left who've done nothing at all about anti-Semitism over the past 2.5 years, except maybe inflame it, stirring it up even more with their ridiculous comments about Israel, with these weekly marches we've had, which are unquestionably hate marches. The government has been sitting on its hands, not doing very much at all, not taking this seriously enough. And in fact, I went down to the Solidarity March in Golders Green on the evening of the attack. There were a few people gathered, mostly Jewish people and a few of their kind of allies and friends. And people were chanting, Keir Starmer, Jew harmer. They booed the Labour Party. They booed the police. They said to the police, you've let us down as well. It takes a lot to anger the Jews of this country. They're a very peaceful, decent minority in this country. It takes a lot to rile them up. But the events of the past few months has really riled them up, and they want answers from this government.
I'll tell you what would have made that very angry Jewish community feel slightly better about our Prime Minister would be that when he finally went down there after about 24 hours in a great big convoy of armour-plated cars, they would feel better about him if he had the courage, the guts to face them. They never saw him. He just went into a building and left. And by the way, when that atrocity unfolded a couple of days ago, I think this was so indicative of the man. What was his response? Two Jewish people, had been stabbed for all he knew to death in Golders Green. A very, very serious terrorist incident. He could be there in half an hour from Westminster. What was his response? It's so classic of the man to call a meeting. Yeah. It's pathetic, isn't it?
Call a meeting. That's his answer to everything. His answer to everything is to have a meeting or to have a summit. Someone said he's got more summits than the Alps. He's just constantly having meetings, constantly having kind of boardroom discussions. That's the only thing he's interested in. It's the only thing he's apparently good at, getting people into a room and yapping on endlessly. He should have been down there very quickly. The fact, as you say, that even when he did eventually go down there, he didn't show his face, he didn't rub shoulders with the local community. I mean, what an indictment of our Prime Minister that is, that he can't even communicate openly, face-to-face with Jews in London, because he knows he'll be booed. He knows that they would not have liked him. They would have said things to him, very critical things. They might have booed, they might have told him to go away. He knows that his government is so unpopular amongst Jews in London that they can't even mingle with them. That's how bad things have got. this is the situation we now have. And, you know, the number of attacks we've seen on Jews in the UK over the past year or so is just astonishing. You know, the murder of 2 Jews in Manchester on Yom Kippur, the burning of the ambulances, the attempted firebombings of synagogues in Kenton and Finchley just a couple of weeks ago. And of course, everyone forgets that in January, there was the guilty verdict in those men who were organizing the largest massacre of Jews in the history of this country up in Manchester. 3 radical Islamists were found guilty of seeking to arm themselves in order to murder hundreds of Jews. That's been completely forgotten. They were found guilty of doing that. It's completely forgotten. So-called anti-racists never talk about these things. There were no left-wingers at the Solidarity March for Jews in Golders Green. They just don't give a toss about Jews. None of these so-called virtuous leftists, none of these woke people really care about the Jewish community, and the Jewish community is well aware of that, and they're increasingly angry about it.
They are frightened and they are furious. As I probably told you before, I literally live around there. I know these people. Now that gathering, that spontaneous march that you joined, our Julia Hartley-Brewer went down there as well, all power to her elbow. Now you put something on Instagram, I hope you don't mind, but I quoted you the other day. That march happened on its route to go past an asylum seeker hotel in the same kind of North London area, Golders Green. It happened to go past an asylum seeker hotel, and you revealed that some of the residents staying at that hotel at taxpayers' expense took the opportunity to come outside and to jeer at the Jews as they marched past, who were marching after 2 of their community had been viciously stabbed in the streets after going to their synagogue earlier in the day. The migrants that we let into the country, that we're paying for, took the opportunity to jeer at these Jews in their moment, in their hour of horror. So it's extraordinary.
It's one of the most sickening things I've seen in quite some time, actually, because you know, here we have Jews very solemnly marching down Golders Green High Street, and quite angrily as well, on a day when 2 of their fellow Jews had just been viciously stabbed, randomly stabbed by a man from Somalia, a man born in Somalia. And then we passed this, what seemed to be a migrant hotel, and there were these very shifty-looking men gathered at the entrance, and they were smirking, they were jeering, they were filming the Jews on their phones. And Kevin, I'm amazed this hasn't had any coverage. I've written about it in the Telegraph today because it really kicked off. Some of the young Jewish lads got really angry, as you would expect, and they were arguing with the migrant men. They tried to get towards them to have a discussion, perhaps, and the Jews were pushed away very forcefully by the police. It really did kick off, and I said to the police, why are you protecting the taunters of Jews rather than the Jews? And so it was an incredibly hairy moment for a few minutes, but where you had these migrant men basically making fun of Jews. And I just thought to myself, this is so repulsive and so tragic. We've got this community that has been in Britain for centuries being made fun of by men who've been here for 5 minutes.
Exactly,
you know,
right.
We got this kind of decent, hardworking Jewish community being mocked by people who we know make no contribution to this society and very likely never will. It was such an interesting display of the problem of multiculturalism, the problem of our broken borders, the problem of the divisions we've inflicted on our own society with our suicidal policies. That's what I really saw in that moment.
Yeah, it's a snapshot of everything that's wrong with Starmer's Britain, shall we say? Yeah. Well, I gave your Instagram post as much coverage as I could as soon as you put it out there. But yeah, more people should pick up on that. That was so wrong. Jack Palahniuk, let's talk about him. Let's talk about these bourgeois middle-class people who are into being kind. They're nice people. They're kind. They're wonderful. They're not like these evil right-wingers. Well, he, first of all, shared a post that suggested the brave coppers who tackled that lunatic with a big backpack on his back that could, for all they knew, be full of explosives. Looked like it, actually. Very brave of them to do that. Zach Palahniuk liked to tweet suggesting they were guilty of police brutality. Even Zach the Pratt has realised he's gone too far. Incredibly, for the first time in his poisonous political career, about an hour ago, he actually apologised. That's something new, but that proves just how far he realised he had crossed the line. But the Green Party in particular, they're a serious problem, aren't they? Zia Youssef last night pointing to them and say, you want to know where a lot of this anti-Semitism is coming from? It's coming from these lovely people in the Green Party.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely right. And even though Zach Polanski has now backtracked on sharing that tweet that you described, we can't just brush this under the carpet. We can't ignore the fact that a leader of a mainstream party, a growing party, loads of middle-class idiots are planning to vote for it, the leader of that party shared a tweet which accused the police of kicking in the head a mentally ill man. That's how it was posed. I saw leftists showing more concern for this man than they did for the Jews he just stabbed.
Yeah.
This is what we're talking about now. This is the moral toilet that these people have sunk into. And Polanski made himself a part of that when he shared that tweet. And the fact is, the police did an incredible job in that moment. And it was actually quite inspiring to see that we still have young coppers who are willing to take extraordinary risks to try and subdue a man who had just stabbed Jews and who had a rucksack, as you say, could well have had a bomb. They didn't know, and they used extreme force to try to disarm him. They were absolutely, completely right to do that. And the vast majority of people in this country know that they were right and will have actually been cheering them on. So Zach Polanski and the Greens have once again showed that they are on the opposite side of the decent majority in this Britain. They are on the side of the cranks, the woke lunatics, the idiots who just hate the police in that really stupid knee-jerk fashion. He's really exposed himself for the kind of juvenile politician he is, and we shouldn't forget it.
Yeah, I would say he reminds me, Zach Polanski, of me when I was about 13 or something, trying to shock my parents by saying, let's legalise heroin so I can take it in the front room, that kind of... I mean, that's what he's like. He's like an immature adolescent out to shock all the old people, all the traditionalists, to shock the establishment. And the rise of this party is terrifying. You know, because he essentially says to, as you say, every middle-class idiot, every kid, you know, revolutionary kid, what would you like me to believe? What would you like me to say? Anything you want, I'll do that. And that is proving to be pretty effective. It's terrifying, this.
Yeah, and it really is, genuinely. It kind of gives me slightly sleepless nights, the number of people who are planning to vote for these lunatics. And you mentioned Question Time. There was, and I think her name's Rachel Millward. She's one of the
deputies. Yeah,
one of the deputy leaders, alongside lovely Mothin Ali. And she was an audience member asked her a brilliant question, because she said that there's a real problem of racial hatred in this country when they were talking about Golders Green. And this audience member said, "Where's it coming from?" And he said it about 3 times. And Fiona Bruce also, they all knew what he was getting at, and they were terrified. Fiona Bruce, the Green Party deputy leader, they had a look of horror on their faces. They were stuttering. They were like, oh God, what are we going to do here? Because deep down, at some level, they know the answer to that question. And they know the answer to that question is that an awful lot of violent Jew hatred is coming from the Muslim community. We have an Islamist problem in this country. It's been energized and boosted by the dangerous ideology of multiculturalism. It's also been energized and boosted by the stupid left, making their Islamo-left alliance with these radical Islamists. That's where a lot of this racial hatred is coming from against the Jews. And none of these people have got the guts to say it, because they are hoping that these extremists vote them into power. So this is the dangerous situation we're in. The Green Party could never tell the truth about where this violent racism is coming from, because they're relying on the vote of the people who are responsible for this violent racism. It's really quite sickening.
Absolutely. I don't know if you're aware of the excellent journalist Khadija Khan. She comes from a strict Muslim family in Pakistan and has sort of rejected Islam altogether. And she's a very interesting person to talk to. She said that she hailed from, in Pakistani Islamic terms, a reasonably moderate household. She said this is indicative of Muslim households all over Britain. She said, but it was just taught to her from a very early age, you know, you hate Jews. We hate Jews. So when people say, well, the problem with anti-Semitism is it's Islamist extremists, I think that we need to confront that it's a lot more than that, that it is almost endemic in normal Muslims to be brought up to, shall we say, veer on serious anti-Semitism.
And no one wants to talk about it. And in fact, if you do talk about it, you'll be shut down and as an Islamophobe. You know, it's now Islamophobic to talk about anti-Semitism. This is the ridiculous Kafkaesque situation we find ourselves in. You know, not long ago, it was possible to talk about these things. I think it was about 20 years ago that Mehdi Hassan, of all people, who's now off in America talking nonsense on his TV channel, he wrote a piece for the New Statesman saying that dinner party anti-Semitism is the Muslim community's dirty secret. He talked about the fact that many Muslims in Britain hate the Jews and are quite open about it in their own circles. And he wrote about this. I thought it was quite a brave thing to do at the time, and there was a bit of a public discussion about it. He would never do that now. And in fact, if any of us did that now, if you or I did it, we would be denounced as racist scumbags. You know, get them off the airwaves. They're Islamophobic. You're not allowed to tell the truth. And even worse than that, not only do we not tell the truth about some of the regressive ideas in sections of the Muslim community, we also bring in more and more of these people every single week, rocking up on our shores in these small boats, getting put up in hotels, including, it seems, in Golders Green, but also around London, around the country, people we know are misogynistic. We know they have anti-Semitic views. We know they treat women differently to men, and they look upon Jewish people as the devil. And we're bringing in hundreds of them every week. It is so suicidally irresponsible. And until we have a government that can get on top of that, we're not going to solve any of these problems.
I don't know if you saw the Jewish news yesterday, the front page. The headline was BS Bingo, and they went through all the cliches that all the politicians say after anti-Semitic terrorist incidents. And if you put them all together, it was almost exactly the text of Keir Starmer's speech in Downing Street yesterday. So the government's response, once again, is to spew out these pathetic, meaningless cliches. What did Shabana Mahmood say? We will strain every sinew to keep Jews safe in this country. Well, you're not really doing that, are you, Shabs? My question to you really is this. Given that, you know, we see anti-Semitic incidents time after time, sometimes horrific, given, you know, the Manchester horror, the Golders Green horror now. Each time, this government's response is feeble, cliche-ridden. They do nothing. My question to you, Brendan, is, in your view, you know, the Labour Party, they've got their problems with anti-Semitism to this day. Is their heart really in tackling Jew hatred?
It doesn't look like it is. That's the real tragedy. And I think Labour suffers from a similar problem, perhaps not as extreme, but a similar problem to the Green Party, which is that it is reliant on large swathes of Muslim voters. It has built its, but because the working classes have very sensibly turned their backs on Labour after Labour turned its back on them, they have to build these new constituencies, and both the Greens and the Labour are going for the same vote, which is posh middle-class people who wear a keffiyeh and Muslims. That's the vote that they're going for, both of them. So that's part of the reason, even if it's instinctive, that's part of the reason they're so unwilling to call out the problem of Muslim anti-Semitism. That's the reason they hardly ever say the word Islamist. And that's the reason that they are cagey when it comes to fighting the return of anti-Semitism to this country. So it's Labour's heart is not in it. And, you know, we have seen for the past 2.5 years, almost every week, certainly twice a month, we've seen those hate marches through London, through other cities. I am sick and tired of pretending that there is no link between those orgies of hatred and the violence that we've seen in Golders Green and Manchester and other places. Because that lunatic in Manchester, whose name, by the way, was Jihad, who
That's right.
attacked the Jews at Heaton Park, he reportedly accused them of killing children in Gaza. And then you see that man, the Jewish gentleman in Slough a couple of weeks ago, who was attacked by a gentleman screaming "baby killer" in his face. We know that the man found guilty today, another failed asylum seeker. He was found guilty of trying to scale the fence of the Israeli embassy in London. He said to the police, "I wanted to go in and kill them because they are fighting a war on children." So if you are marching through the streets every weekend saying that the Zionist lobby kills children, the Jews love taking the blood of innocent, they are demonic, they're the most evil country in the world. If you are doing that, then you have 100% inflamed this hatred for Jews. And I think we need to be really serious about that now.
I agree with you, Brendan. You've seen them, I've seen them. The thing about these pro-Palestine marches is they're Jew-hate marches. I would not ban pro-Palestine marches if they were just that, but they're not. They're Jew-hatred marches, and if that is what they are, then I think we have to think about stopping them. Brendan, fantastic to have you on, as always. Thank you very much. Brendan O'Neill, the brilliant chief political writer at Spiked Online. We're going to take a different tack next. We're going to talk about Angela Rayner. She's on manoeuvres. She wants to be our next Prime Minister. There's a big campaign to stop her. Some people saying she proved why she shouldn't be a Prime Minister on Monday in the Strangers Bar in the House of Parliament, where she got steaming drunk and bashed into a door and broke it. I don't think that's the reason she shouldn't be Prime Minister. I don't mind people having a drink now and again. I don't mind people getting drunk. I'm not sure, though, whether or not Angela has got the intellectual bandwidth to be our leader. We'll talk about that next. Stay where you are.
Sent us a picture that made me feel so ashamed. We look like hoarders.
Chris Marshall! Yeah, I'm actually recovering from an accident right now. You've landed loose today, haven't you?
Yeah, don't shake the arm, Chris, too much.
You're with Danny Boyle, who's like the maddest director ever. He's got so much energy. He's like you.
Is Starmer fueling anti-Semitism?
I don't think he's doing anything to deal with anti-Semitism. The attempt to gaslight the British people and the Jewish community is appalling.
This has to stop. It's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's go straight over to my next guest. He's political commentator and former independent mayor of Middlesbrough, Andy Preston. Welcome, Andy.
Hi, Kevin.
Right, before we talk, what's on the discussion we're going to have is Angela Rayner fit to be the Prime Minister? We know she's on manoeuvres next Thursday. Is it May the 7th? The local elections are likely to deliver a kind of death blow to Starmer, the annihilation of Labour seats across the country. Some say maybe as many as like 1,900 losses. So at that point, we know West Streeting might be ready to strike, and also Angela Rayner. There's a campaign going on called Anyone But Ange among Labour MPs who fear she might not be suitable for the highest office in the land. One reason is on Monday, apparently she got steaming drunk in the Strangers Bar in Westminster in the House of Parliament and bashed into a door, staggered into a door and broke it. Now, personally, I don't mind that. I don't mind people getting drunk now and again. I don't mind people having a few drinks. I would never say that is no reason to be Prime Minister. I mean, Winston Churchill was drunk his whole life and he was a very good Prime Minister. So you know what I'm saying. I don't have a problem with that. My problem, potentially, with Angie is this. Does she have the intellectual bandwidth? Does she have the basic grasp of politics to be our Prime Minister? Here she is a few years back being interviewed by Andrew Neil on the BBC, during which I think she displayed a frightening lack of ability and a lack of basic knowledge. Let's have a look at this.
How much would you say?
You've cut 50%. In my constituency, both of my councils have seen over 50% cuts to their budget. No. So all of the people that need support are in acute services now, crippling our NHS.
So you would be able to give them more money by changing the corporation tax and changing the capital gains tax to raise more money.
You don't cut taxes when you need that money to help. You should be investing.
You don't know, do you?
You should be investing in those services. No, Andrew, I'm talking about investment with the money we've currently got. At the moment, the government are not investing that money in our communities, in our areas where it's required. They're spending, they're cutting tax for those that are the richest, and they're spending money in the wrong places.
I'll give you because I'm lost.
Well, she went on to reveal that she had no idea. She kept accusing the government of increasing corporation tax when in fact they cut it. She got everything wrong. She had no understanding of basic tax systems, and that is our problem. That is our problem. So the problem with you have to be careful here, Andy, because people might accuse someone like me of saying, "Oh, you're saying she can't be Prime Minister because she left school at 16, you know, had a child, and you know, is not educated, didn't go to Oxford or Cambridge." That isn't my problem with her. Just because you leave school at 16 and you're working class, that doesn't mean to say you're not very intelligent. She left school at 16, and I suggest she does not have the intellectual bandwidth to be our Prime Minister. I think that's what the Anything But Ange campaign is about, not the fact she has a drink now and again.
Yeah, totally, Kevin. Listen, I think Angela Rayner, there's something about her feistiness that I really like, that flame hair, combative. She once described herself as the female John Prescott, who I think many of us secretly, you know, quite liked. But like John Prescott, she talks in riddles. She never actually says anything. Now, if you're a union leader and your job is to scream sound bites into a mic to raise a crowd's enthusiasm and passion, that's brilliant. When you're in charge of monstrous budgets, heaven forbid the actor in charge of the government itself, it is not good enough. Angela Rayner, unless she's hiding it really well, is just not bright enough to hold anything like a top job in politics, like nothing like it. And Kevin, people say she's got where she is despite being working class, and it's amazing. It's not. She got where she is because she's working class. She is the pet plaything of posh middle class socialists who want to feel that there's a blue collar girl doing really well. She's been promoted way above a pay grade. And by the way, this isn't snobbery of me. Let's remember for a minute a great prime minister we had who didn't get a good crack at it, but a great prime minister was a working class boy from Brixton, John Major. And he didn't go around screaming sound bites and being combative and aggressive and abusive. He was a decent man who humbly put forward intelligent arguments. And there's a difference.
I think Jim Callaghan, the Labour Prime Minister, who of course had his problems as a Prime Minister, but he wasn't thick, he wasn't stupid. I think he left school at 16, no qualifications, didn't go to university. So yeah, it's very important to say this, because a lot of people say, oh, you're saying she can't be Prime Minister because she's working class and she left school at 16 and she had an illegitimate child. It's nothing to do with that. No. You could be all of that and you could be absolutely brilliant. Educational qualifications are not necessary for people to be very intelligent. That's an absolutely fact.
Right.
The problem with her is I don't think she is very intelligent.
I think, Kevin, you have to be able to put forward coherent arguments. As a minister, as a Secretary of State, you have to be on top of your brief and know the facts. And time after time, you know, she's demonstrated she's not interested in the detail, can't retain it. So she just acts all bullshit, which is the trade union way. And it's not appropriate. So I'm not surprised that there's a Anyone But Angie campaign. It sounds like a sitcom, actually, doesn't it? Anyone But Angie. It'd be a good sitcom. But I'm not surprised because I think they know that under Angela Rayner, things would be dreadful. The commentator, Tim Stanley, said earlier today that he would, talking about her drinking, her rumoured drinking, that he would rather take a drunk Angela Rayner over a sober Keir Starmer. But I actually think that Angie would be worse. I think Angie would be catastrophic. It would be an extreme disaster very quickly.
I mean, a lot of people will actually like the story of her getting drunk on Monday, that she likes a drink. I mean, I quite like the idea of that. If she was bright and I thought she could be a good Prime Minister, I'd probably like her more because she goes out and has a drink. It makes her more human. It's nothing to do with that. It's not the problem. The problem is, does she have the intellectual bandwidth to be this nation's leader? I think the answer to that is a categoric no. Time and time again, you see her on TV and she's just spewing these left-wing platitudes. Got to help the old people, got to help children, got to spend more money on social contracts, etc., etc., etc. Doesn't make much sense. She's not across the detail. That is the problem. But she will be on manoeuvres after the local election, undoubtedly. But we learned yesterday, Andy, let me see what you think about this, but apparently West Streeting has the numbers in the Parliamentary Labour Party to attack Starmer and could defenestrate him if he gets the right number of supporters. Yeah. I think that Streeting might be the one. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, maybe. You know what? There's a lot to Streeting that the public could warm to. He is a good communicator. He's quite slick. The problem is, a major problem is that his constituency is likely to change hands at the next election. I think his majority was about 400, 500 from memory. So that will go. That will go. If things stand as they are, Kevin, West Streeting will be gone. And I think that's why Angela Rayner is still about 5-2 with the bookies, 2.5 to 1, and West Streeting is out at like 6 or 7. So he's miles behind. So I'm sceptical of whether he's got the numbers, because anyone who backs him knows that he's likely to lose his seat. If you want a PM, the PM's got to have a really safe seat.
Well, there's another problem with Angela Rayner. If they lose the Muslim vote, she loses her seat. So, you know, all in all, anyone but Ange, I'll go along with that. Andy, good to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. Andy Preston, their political commentator, former independent mayor of Middlesbrough. Would you like Angela Rayner to be our Prime Minister? Because it's getting real, folks. It could happen fairly soon. Let me know what you think. 03444991000. Or would you prefer West Streeting? Or would you prefer Keir Starmer to carry on? Or would you prefer to emigrate? 03444991000. I think I'll take the latter personally. Next up, we're going to talk about the Falklands. Is Argentina preparing for another invasion? I'm not exaggerating, the signs are there. We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's talk about the Falklands. I think trouble may be brewing down in the South Atlantic. The RAF is right now on high alert amid rising concerns that the Argentines could be set to stake their claim to the islands once again after 1982, of course, when we sent 40 warships to stop them when they invaded what they call the Malvinas the last time. On social media, Argentina's Vice President Victoria Villarreal earlier this week declared that today more than ever the Malvinas are Argentinian, and that if the people who live there insist they are English, why don't they go and live in England? Meanwhile, Argentina has purchased a fleet of American F-16 fighter jets. And I guess the question on the table is, if they do invade again, Would Britain be in a position to defend those islands like we did back in '82 when Margaret Thatcher was our Prime Minister? Let's talk to former Middle East Minister and former Chairman of the Defence Select Committee, former soldier as well, Tobias Ellwood. Welcome, Tobias. Well, you heard that. The RAF on full alert. These are worrying times, aren't they?
Yes, I think we also need to keep our feet on the ground. I was in Washington, D.C. last week when this story broke that America might change its position and challenge the UK sovereignty over the islands. It didn't resonate there at all. Most Americans didn't even know where the islands actually were. And if you listen to Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, he's now dismissed this absolutely as a story. It was conjured up as part of some form of reprisals that the belly of the Pentagon were looking at to sort of push back because NATO countries weren't supporting Trump's efforts in Iran. We should place in perspective that you cannot be an Argentine president without regularly making claim for these islands. It's what they do. In the same way that if you've been to Gibraltar, there's regular claims to say that they want the rock back as well. That's not to dismiss the fact that if there's any military, flexing of muscles, would we be able to defend the islands? I would absolutely say yes, we can. I've been the first with you, to complain about the fact we're not spending enough on our defence posture, given where our world's going. But I would say what we have down there, the ability to defend the islands is quite incredible, enough that we could then mount.
Is he still? Oh, that's a shame. I think we just lost Tobias. But to put it in context, I am ancient enough to remember 1982. And what we did, the Argentinians... Tobias, are you back with us? Is he? No. Yeah, what we did is what Margaret Thatcher did. They invaded the Falkland Islands, where British people live, and Margaret Thatcher dispatched a massive task force, it was called, of 40 ships, massive great aircraft carriers, warships, 40 ships, all the way down to the South Atlantic, the tip of the south coast of South America, to defend those islands. And my question is could we do that now? I think Tobias is back with us. Did you catch the gist of that? In 1982, as I was just saying, I'm ancient enough to remember it, we dispatched 40 ships down to reclaim those islands, to regain those islands in now legendary circumstances. Could we do that again, Tobias?
Yeah, I mean, I remember it very vividly indeed. And we grew up in the Cold War, but this was the one challenge that we watched unfold day by day. And quite incredible it was to see us mount this armada, essentially, this naval capabilities and Air Force capabilities to go right across the Atlantic to the south and retake the islands. Quite incredible it was indeed. Could we do it again? You're right to question that, and we need to rebuild our armed forces. The point, though, is that you wouldn't be starting from scratch. You just had a group of Marines there. You had a couple, a half a regiment of Marines there. Today, there's a fifth generation aircraft. We've got Sky Sabre air defense. You've got the Marines are on patrol down there as well. So our ability to deter any attack is of a different order than it was to 1982. Then there's the politics of it as well. You mentioned F-16s. They've got kill switches in them. I don't know if you're aware of this, but because they belong to America, were they to do anything in errant behavior which would go against American thinking, there's ways of affecting the software, which means they wouldn't safely be able to be used. So there's an awful lot of politics that would then form into play. But absolutely, you still need, the best way to deter is by strengthening your muscles. And if Britain looks weak more widely, then countries like Argentina and others will then possibly take advantage of that.
Indeed. The F-16 business is interesting because Britain apparently, we should stress that these jets, these American jets, the American-made jets, fighter jets, were sold to Argentina when Joe Biden was still the president. Britain objected, but America basically told us to shut up and wind our neck in. Again, you worry that heavily armed Argentina may look at the exposing of our deficiencies, our military deficiencies, which has unfolded in the last few weeks in the wake of the Iranian war, and may sort of think, well, now's the time to seize our opportunity. And I do sense that if they did, we certainly wouldn't be able to respond as sort of heroically and dramatically as we did last time, and perhaps this time they might succeed in reclaiming the Malvinas.
Yeah, I mean, back then we had 36 fast jet squadrons. Today we just have 6. You know, we had 60 frigates and destroyers, but we struggle to get one to sea at sea today. I would say something more geopolitically. This is the bigger picture of our world splintering into 2. If you do not keep Argentina close to you, even though we've got this bun fight going on over the Falklands, where would Argentina turn to get its fast jet fighters? To China. And that is what we must understand. There are many countries in Latin America, I was there not long ago, that are now turning to China for military support, for the Army, Air Force and Navy, and indeed in the cyber world as well. That is dangerous. That really is. The idea that America wants to stay close to Argentina absolutely makes sense. We've got to get over this. We've got to move forward, find a political solution, and make sure that Argentina understands that the people of the Falklands have voted very much to stay as they are. And it may be politically opportunist to say you want them back, but absolutely not. They remain part of under British sovereign rule, and that's the way it's going to stay. We need America to be a bit more robust about this and themselves stop playing political football about this because we didn't come along and help them out in Iran.
One of the strange problems of the 1982 campaign was this. It did transpire. It emerged as we in Britain said, these are our people. You can't take these islands. They're British. And it turned out that actually the Falkland Islanders did not have British passports, but they were swiftly issued with them during the campaign. So this time, if there's any problems, these people are officially British citizens. And if Argentina does do anything, we are going to have to try to respond very robustly.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, ultimately, you need the hard power, but you also need the soft power. We need to ensure that America recognizes the importance of those islands, and they're very much British. It was Margaret Thatcher that actually made her mark, I think, back in '82, to make it very, very clear. This is what Britain does. We need to be able to do it again. And you're right to say right now, when we look, the cupboard is bare. And for different reasons, that's happened over the last 2 or 3 decades. Now it's time to absolutely upgrade our defense posture. And I'm shocked, I really am shocked, that after the defense review so powerfully was made last year, making it very clear that all our domains of warfare need to be improved, still this government hasn't actually signed any checks, confirmed the defense investment plan, and allowed the procurement to start that we so desperately need as our world gets more dangerous.
Well said, Tobias. Before you go, can I just ask you one question? Perhaps you could clarify. What the hell is going on with the Iran war at the moment? Seems to be some kind of stasis. President Trump has literally just announced outside the White House that he's not happy with the latest Iranian proposal. So the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz continues both by the Americans and the Iranians. You know, we seem to be locked in some kind of a stalemate, which is going to be incredibly damaging, not only to Britain's economy, but to the world's economy. We are on the edge of some kind of economic precipice unless something is done very, very quickly.
I think this is the shock that Donald Trump didn't appreciate. I think he, after Venezuela, he thought, right, let's go for it. Don't forget, every single American president has had to deal with the pain, the difficulty of what Iran has done across the Middle East, and he decided to act, but he didn't have a plan. And the first thing everybody knew Iran would then do would be absolutely to control those straits, which are such a choke point for the world's economy because of 1/5 of the oil coming out there. back in America, it's very unpopular. The petrol prices are actually going up, and he's now looking for an off-ramp. The midterm elections are coming up, and he wants to get out. So I think he's going to try and drag this out and then claim some form of victory, and I'm afraid leave the mess for the rest of us to clean up.
I'll tell you what, we haven't quite felt the full force of this yet, and we will within about 6 weeks. And when it hits, we are going to know about it. The whole world will know about it. It is incredibly worrying, Tobias, but good to have you on, as always. Thank you so much for your time. Tobias Ellwood there, former Middle East Minister, former Chairman of the Defence Select Committee, and probably most importantly, a former soldier. Now, next up, it is time for Sun Sports, so stick around.
About Jimmy.
Olivia Moore! And they sent us a picture that made me feel so ashamed. We look like hoarders.
Chris Marshall! Yeah, I'm actually recovering from an accident right now. You've landed loose today, haven't you?
Yeah, don't shake the arm, Chris, too much.
You're with Danny Boyle, who's like the maddest director ever. He's got so much energy. He's like you.
Is Starmer fueling anti-Semitism?
I don't think he's doing anything to deal with anti-Semitism. The attempt to gaslight the British people and the Jewish community is appalling.
This has to stop. It's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Alex Shilton from the Sun Sport Department is in the building, in the studio, in fact. We're going to go through some of the big stories of the day. Arsenal defender Gabriel should have been shown the red card for that violent conduct against Man City. What's that about, Alex?
Well, Mikel Arteta's been trying to feed this narrative that decisions have been going against Arsenal. He was really pointed after they beat Newcastle that Kuzanov should have been sent off in the City win and that Nick Pope should have gone. But they've looked at one of those incidents. 5-person panel sits, has a look at it, and they voted 3-2 that the red card incident in the game was not the Kuzanov one, which they think Anthony Taylor made the correct decision, but excessive force when Gabriel put his head into Haaland. That would have been a 3-match ban. It would have meant he was banned for Newcastle. It would also have meant that he was banned for the game against Fulham and the following game as well. So he's dodged a bullet there. So
Arteta moaning that they're picked upon, but he's the one who got out of jail, right?
He did, yeah.
Arsenal got Fulham tomorrow. I shall be there rooting for my team, Fulham. What do you reckon on that game?
I think it's going to be tense for Arsenal. I think Fulham are at that point of the season. People talk about teams like Fulham being on the beach, but they've got something to play for.
They do, actually.
And actually, I think it can be quite liberating this point of the season. They're in reasonable form. They had a good win against Aston Villa last week, and I think they can trouble Arsenal. I think Arsenal will probably feel fairly still for the game by how they played at Atletico Madrid. I think after 4 straight defeats, going into the 2 wins they've had recently, mentally I think they'll feel a bit better for it, but it's going to be tense.
They've got a serious nervousness problem, and they've had that now for about a month, haven't they?
Yeah, particularly the home games. I think given the lead that they held, the prospect of throwing that away, I think is really kind of getting to the fans, and players are talking about the tension that you can feel at the games. There were Bournemouth players talking about it when Bournemouth won there. It was evident for the Newcastle game last week.
I think we Fulham fans will have a bit of fun tomorrow, that's for damn sure, whether or not we win or lose. Brighton have brought in an MMA fighter to teach them about grappling at corners. Won't he teach them about a foul or something?
Well, that'd be the worry, but I mean, there is so much of this now. The manager Fabian Herzl has said I think it's a chap called Chris Eckelin, German guy that he used to play football, and he brought him in, we think, in August, but he's said today that he had him in a couple of months ago. Now that was actually in the build-up to an Arsenal game. We think, which would be an interesting timeline. I don't think Fabian Herzl is a big fan of all this grappling that's going on at corners, the dark art stuff. I think he would rather Brighton didn't have to contend with that. But he talks about not wanting his team to be a soft touch, and he's just covering the bases, I think.
You see these corners, you see the defenders and what they're doing. I mean, if the referee fancied it, on most corners in the Premier League, he could call penalties on most corners, because they are, as you say, they're fighting like wrestlers.
Well, I think the key next season is the way they officiate that has to change. And if someone's got the balls to go and make a decision early on in the season, I think that could have an impact going forward.
Interesting. Very quickly, a quick sort of preview of the final day of the Championship. Ipswich, Millwall, Middlesbrough, all tussling it out. What's going on?
It's in Ipswich's hands. If Ipswich beat QPR at home, they're back in the Premier League. If they slip up and Millwall were to beat already relegated Oxford, that'll be Millwall back in the top flight for the first time in 36 years.
Wow.
If they both slip up, that opens the door for Middlesbrough, who've got a hard game at Wrexham. Wrexham can seal a playoff spot with a win. So there's lots of incentive there for Wrexham. Hard for Borough. You'd fancy Ipswich. It's in their hands.
I'll tell you what, you've got to love this time of the season, haven't you? So much to play for.
Yeah,
Alex Shilton from the Sun Sport Department, fantastic stuff. All in the back pages of your favourite newspaper. Next up, after the 6 o'clock news, we're going to go through some of the big stories of the day with Stephen Barrett, the remarkable Stephen Barrett. He'll be with us for about half an hour, 40 minutes. Looking forward to that. That next, stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. For the next 35-40 minutes or so, I'm very pleased to announce that I will be in the excellent company of barrister and political commentator Stephen Barrett. He's in the studio. Welcome, Steve.
It's a pleasure to be here, Kev, as always.
But in very sad circumstances, really, so I need to get your take, your overarching feeling about the horror in Golders Green. And let's be specific. Where do you stand on pro-Palestine marches? This is what I think. I would not ban pro-Palestine marches, but I would ban Jew hate marches. And the problem is, pro-Palestine marches are Jew hate marches. What are your thoughts?
I think that is the point to make, and I stand entirely with Suella Braverman, and the problem is that I think that they crossed the line into hate marches long ago. Obviously, you can have legitimate marches and legitimate demonstrations about Palestine or other political causes, but I think they really did cross the line. I think they crossed the legal threshold long ago, and the problem that we had is that so Suella went public with that. I didn't actually say it because I just knew what would happen. The minute you say it, a left-leaning lawyer will immediately say, as they did to Suella's completely wrong, she's an idiot, she's a moron, she's blah, 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 all of this abuse that you get, just because the rule itself, the relevant law is actually quite flabbily written. So you can argue it both ways, and that's, okay, but what's happening in law, and you can argue lots of laws both ways, it's not that uncommon in law, but what's happening is that this idea that unless you agree with the left, you will be pilloried, mocked and traduced, and I wish I'd been braver and I'd stood with Suella at that time, because Suella's reputation was unfairly, absolutely trashed. Remember, Suella said that Globalise the Intifada was wrong. I agree with Suella now. I don't think I was brave enough to say it publicly a couple of years ago. And now the Prime Minister agrees with Suella. At the end of the day, this has gone on far too long. It was always going to lead to this, and Jewish lives are being lost, and Jews are being injured and damaged and hurt when we should have stopped this years ago.
Well, exactly. I'll give you a little snapshot of what happened the other day, get your thoughts on this, and I think it sort of cuts to the heart of the matter, because it focuses in on one of the sources, I would suggest, of this explosion of anti-Semitism, of Jew hatred that's afflicting this country right now. So, Wednesday, that horror unfolded. There's a spontaneous gathering of Jews and supporters from Golders Green around the clock tower. And then they marched off in protest. A protest about they felt frightened, furious and unsafe. Please do something, government. That was the nature of the march. So it was solemn, but shall we say good-natured. They walked off, and it just so happened, and we know that this happened because Brendan O'Neill had joined them, the writer for Spiked Online.
Very intelligent man.
Indeed. He was on the show an hour or so ago. Nice. And he told me this story, but he'd also posted it on Instagram, so I'd already given it the oxygen of publicity. So he's on this march, and it happened to go past, just north of Golders Green, there is an asylum seeker hotel. It went past this hotel, whereupon some of the residents, the migrants who are living there at our expense, at taxpayers' expense, took the opportunity to come out of the hotel, to come out of the front door and stand on the pavement jeering at this Jewish procession, which they were marching more in sorrow than in anger, because two of their community had been viciously stabbed by a knife-wielding maniac earlier in the day. Doesn't that sum up the crux of this problem? That people who have been part of Britain's community for centuries, being mocked and jeered and spat at by people who arrived illegally on small boats 5 minutes ago. There's something very wrong with that picture.
Yes, and I think when we talk about British Jews, we really do need to highlight that it was 1656 that we let them back in, and they've not caused any bother since. You know, and they've integrated. Of course, they're different, and they practice their religion, and that's absolutely fine. But they are the model of a successful migration, successful integration. And the idea that we are importing these men, these dangerous men, every day we have a story, Kev. Every single day we see a story where they do something outrageous. You know, we are importing these criminals. It's well beyond a national emergency. We have legal powers to deal with this. And one of the reasons, probably the only useful thing I can do in the public, a little bit of the public eye I have, is point out that we don't need any new laws. Okay, if anybody tells you that they need a new law to deal either with the migrant boats, or with the hate marches, or these migrant criminals, they don't. We need to get rid of some laws. You might need to get rid of the ECHR and all those laws if you want to actually succeed in some of these areas. But banning the marches, you don't need any laws for at all. Prescribing the Iran Revolutionary Guard, that doesn't need any new law at all. And I saw the Prime Minister, the Prime Weasel, trying to suggest that he needed a new law. He was going to give himself. He doesn't need a new law. They can just prescribe it. It could have been done this afternoon.
Like they did with Palestine Action.
Yeah, exactly. It could have been done this afternoon by Shabana Mahmood. It was not done.
Same deal for the Muslim Brotherhood, right? We should ban them.
Well, and what's particularly upsetting about the Muslim Brotherhood is that our friends and allies, the Muslim country of the UAE, and all of the Muslims there, are begging us to outlaw and ban the Muslim Brotherhood, just as they have done. Yeah, they did it, Saudi did it, Egypt did it. Why would we allow them to live here? They've got houses here, they own property here. We have become the nerve centre for terrorism. This is insane. Why is Britain such a weak, soft touch? Why are we full, Kev? And I don't include you and me in this, but why are we governed by weak men? Because we are. It's
what Matt Goodwin called suicidal empathy, that somehow or other our bien-pensant middle classes who all live in North London and buy The Guardian, have dinner parties together talking about socialism. They feel somehow or other they've got to let all these people in, because if they don't let them in, that would be unkind. And it is that kind of suicidal empathy that is destroying this country, I would suggest. And Keir Starmer is right at the heart of that.
He is. He's absolutely conditioned in it. I completely reject the idea that I have a moral obligation to let in a child rapist, that I have a moral obligation to let in a danger to women, that I have a moral obligation to let in a thief and a criminal, because there's other crimes going on. It's not just the outrageous ones that get all the attention. I reject the idea that I have any moral obligation to let those people in, and we can be very selective. We certainly were in the past, Kev. I might have mentioned it before, but there's a book in 1820 talking about our Constitution, and it very clearly highlights that we give special immigration status, what we call it today, that's not what they call it, but it's what we call it today, to foreign Protestants who are Protestants like us, and Jews. And we gave special immigration status to them, and that's the Huguenots coming, and that's the Jews coming. So for those who know their history, that we recognise that you pick and choose which cultures you let in.
Let me get a few of your thoughts on the Prime Minister, the government's response. Well, first of all, let's talk about Keir Starmer personally. I thought it was a mark of the man that this unfolded, was it Wednesday morning? Think about it. 2 British citizens knifed, stabbed in the neck by a maniac running around with a knife outside a synagogue in North London. It's, half an hour from Westminster. He could have got in a limo and gone straight there. He should have got in a limo and gone straight there. What was his response? Call a meeting.
Yeah.
Call a meeting. I mean, I'll tell you what, if you're standing with Keir Starmer and somebody opens a machine gun on you, he'll call a meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, his first thought won't be to duck, it will be to call a meeting. Secondly, why did it take him 24 hours to get down there? And when he did go down there, why was he too scared to show his face? He's a disgraceful, cowardly little man, don't you think?
I think he's the weasel Prime Minister, Kev. Yeah. I really don't care which political party you feel closely affiliated with. This man is the worst Prime Minister we've ever had. There's a very witty senator over in America, because they know how bad our Prime Minister is. And this senator
sure do.
has said a very funny thing about Keir Starmer. I probably won't repeat it just in case Ofcom, get told off. But he basically compared our Prime Minister to a horrendous sexual disease. And he said he's as popular as that. And he's got a very charming southern accent, so it lands even more strongly. But the world knows that Keir Starmer is an absolute weasel and a disgrace of a man. He is a weasel and a disgrace of a man. I think we should also flag Ed Davey, because a lot of this is caused by people who keep pretending that there is a genocide in Gaza. Yeah. There is no genocide in Gaza. There has never been a genocide in Gaza. But they say that there is a genocide in Gaza, and then they get claps, and they get likes on social media, and Ed Davey is very happy with himself. And then people murder Jews because they believe in a fake genocide in Gaza.
Yeah, here's what I think about Ed Davey. I just think he's an idiot. He's a cretin, but he doesn't matter because the Lib Dems will always be small because they're all losers. Here is the terrifying thing that's going on right now, for reasons that baffle me. Well, actually, they don't baffle me. I kind of understand the rise of the Green Party. I think it's terrifying, and that poisonous little man who runs the Green Party, Zach Polanski, is an alarming character, to say the least. You will know, Steve, in the last couple of hours, for the first time in his rancid little life, he's actually apologised. He's apologised for liking 2 tweets that suggested those incredibly brave coppers who arrested the lunatic, for all they knew, with a great big backpack of explosives on his back. He liked tweets, shared tweets that suggested that was police brutality. He has, after getting a letter from the police chief, Sir Mark Rowley, the Met Police chief, suggested, hey, you're just inflaming tensions in an already tense area, Golders Green. Not to be fair, Zach Polanski has apologised for that. But the Green Party are not the only source of anti-Semitism in this country. Far from it. But they're a big source of it, aren't they?
They are a huge source of it. And, credit where credit's due. This is probably the one thing Mark Rowley's ever done that I'm actually proud of him for.
Yeah.
I was really proud of the...
Cometh the hour.
Cometh the hour, yeah. I was really proud of the Met Police Twitter account, which stood with the officers very quickly, and then you get the letter from the commissioner later. Obviously, we must stand with these officers. We simply can't be a country where you turn on the people who are trying to protect you. This is like the prosecution of veterans. You don't turn on the people who are trying to protect you. You don't turn on people who work in the SAS, because I'm afraid bad times come and you do need strong men. And for far too long we have been attacking strong men. It's been absolutely ridiculous. But the Green Party is without doubt a source of this hatred. I think it's going to rip itself apart, because Zach Polanski is getting 2 types of criticism within the Green Party. The decent people who probably still think the Green Party is about the environment, ho, ho, ho. The decent people in the Greens...
They never mention it these days.
So they're angry at him for doing it.
I think I care more about the environment than Green Party members.
Well, exactly, but a substantial portion...
And that's saying something.
Well, I am a bit soft. I'm a bit hug a tree, but I really like trees. But the other half of his party is attacking him for apologising. So how do you reconcile these 2 groups? You can't reconcile them. And this has been the story of politics recently. Yeah. People trying to form coalitions of unreconcilable factions. Yeah. And I think the Green Party are going to be the next example of a coalition of unreconcilable factions, because how do you have trans for Gaza? You can't.
Was it Queers for Palestine?
Queers for Palestine. You just can't.
Why don't you go there? They'll chuck you off a car park.
Exactly. It's just unbelievably stupid. These are not coalitions that work. And I think the Green Party is going to discover this. And all those people, I mean, it's not a big party, but those people who are genuinely in there for environmental reasons, I'm terribly sorry, your party's been hijacked by Marxists and dangerous people who hate Jews.
Interesting you should say this. Breaking news. Sharon Haskell, Israel's Deputy Foreign Minister, has announced that Zach Polanski is an extremist. She says that he has fueled anti-Semitism in Britain over his response to the Golders Green attack, which was to go for the police. rather than express sympathy for those poor guys who got stabbed. So Israel saying Zach Pulaski is an extremist who has fueled anti-Semitism in this country. I think that's a rather mild assessment of him, but it is certainly accurate. It's accurate.
It's accurate, and I'm a Zionist. I'd almost love...
Me too, so we're going to end up in jail if old Pulaski comes to PM.
We'll just all be in
He wants to make Zionism a crime.
We'll all be in the gulag together, Kev, but all my friends will be there. But I'm a Zionist for a very sad reason, because I wish my country would protect Jews. So if Britain was a place where Jews would always be safe, always be absolutely 100% safe, then I wouldn't need to be a Zionist. But very sadly, I don't trust my own country to protect Jews, and that's an awful thing to have to admit. Because I love my country.
Because I just said to Brendan O'Neill, I asked him this question. I'll ask you the same question. In the end, we've seen the absolute feeble response by Keir Starmer and his cabinet crew. Same old claptrap, same old cliches. As I keep saying, the Jewish News yesterday, its headline was bullshit bingo, and they had all the usual quotes, which were things like, there's no place for hatred in this country, anti-Semitism must be stamped, blah blah blah.
Thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, thoughts and prayers and all that. And if you put so they've got all the little boxes. If you put all those cliches together, hey presto, you've got Keir Starmer's speech yesterday in Downing Street. So their response, absolutely feeble. What should they do?
We should prescribe the Muslim Brotherhood and the Iran Revolutionary Guard. We should admit that we are at war with Iran and that Iran is using proxies to attack us and firing missiles at us. We should let our allies use their bases. We should consider what more we could do militarily against Iran and work cooperatively with our allies. We should take emergency policing measures to protect the Jewish community. And I think we need to have a national... It just needs to be explained to people how... I'd really love to see like a short film explaining just how ordinary British Jews live their lives. You know, the blast doors, the secondary doors, the bolts, the electronic, security, the constant CCTV.
You've seen synagogues. I mean, I live up there. You see synagogues. They look like fortresses.
Yeah, exactly. We see this, and the level of security that sadly British Jews think is normal. If that was shown to the silent majority in this country, they would be absolutely outraged. Imagine if my local parish church had to have that level of security. That would be absolutely outrageous. And I think we have a real campaign in support of the British Jewish community, explaining its long history here, its noble history here. British Jews who have contributed hugely to public life. I think of in the law we have Lord Etherton, who was an absolutely brilliant judge and our first openly gay judge.
Well, they're part of our...
They're part of us.
They're British. They're British citizens.
But I think, and every party leader should be made to say there is no genocide in Gaza.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Say it.
Yeah, it's an absolute fact. Now, last question to you before we go to break. You're going to stick around, so I'm very pleased about that. But this is the question I asked Brendan. I'm going to ask you as well. Here's the deal. So the government's response has been characteristically utterly feeble. Here's 25 million quid. We'll try and get you a few more coppers. That's basically it. None of the measures that you just suggested, banning the IRCG, banning the Muslim Brotherhood, closing down the Iranian embassy.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that one.
Banning the pro-Palestine marches because they're Jew hate marches. All of those they could do, but instead, here's 25 million quid. That's it. So why was their response so feeble? Why is it always so feeble? Here's what I suggest. Despite the fact, in fairness, Starmer, he's done some good work trying to deal with the problem of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, but do not go running away with the idea that there's no anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. So there's that. Secondly, we know that this Labour government is obsessed with the Muslim vote. There's only there's fewer than 300,000 Jews in Britain. Their votes are nothing to the Labour Party. There are 4 million Muslims and they want to suck up to them because they need those votes because working class whites don't vote Labour anymore. So those two factors mean, in my view, that the problem with anti-Semitism, the problem with this government not responding robustly to this horror, is their heart is not in tackling Jew hatred.
No, because at the heart of the Labour Party and the current movement, with its identity politics and its Marxism, is a really patronising view of people. So they say that they accept me because of my sexuality. They don't. What they're really doing is saying, we'll tolerate you. They say that they accept people of different ethnicities. They don't. They actually hold them in quite low regard. And you can see that demonstrated with Muslims, because all my friends who are Muslims do not hate Jews and are not anti-Semitic. And you know, that is not... So Labour is like, no, they're all anti-Semites, so I'll just have to go along with them. And that's actually a very patronising way to see, you know, British Muslims. You know, I live in a town where we've got 5-6 generations of integrated Muslims. You know, my mates are just not, you know, in any way what the Labour Party think British Muslims are. So even to the British Muslim community, it's particularly offensive. But we must stop importing first generation people with knives who are a threat. The one who attacked the Israeli embassy, who was
16 days after he got a small boat across the channel.
16 days. And do you know what? It's even more pathetic.
Yeah, I know, he'd done it before.
He'd done it before. He came and he left.
Got on the wrong coach, went back to France. He's not a master criminal.
Back. It's just unbelievable that this is our border. Unbelievable. If you told Churchill.
We've got to do something about this, because of course we can't talk too much about the suspect because he's being charged now, but we can say he's from Somalia. So a lot of Brits will be asking, why the hell did we ever let him in the first place? And more to the point, why did we make him a British citizen? There's something very, very wrong about all of this. Let's go to break now, Stephen. We'll come back in a minute and continue this excellent conversation. That next, stick around.
They sent us a picture that made me feel so ashamed. We look like hoarders.
Chris Marshall!
Yeah, I'm actually recovering from an accident right now.
You've landed loose today, haven't you?
Yeah, don't shake the arm, Chris, too much.
You're with Danny Boyle, who's like the maddest director ever. He's got so much energy. He's like you.
Is Starmer fueling anti-Semitism?
I don't think he's doing anything to deal with anti-Semitism. The attempt to gaslight the British people and the Jewish community is appalling.
This has to stop. It's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's Friday, so according to tradition, I'm going to promote my TV shows. I make 2 every single week, apart from doing this every single day. Stick a broom up my backside, I'll sweep the floor at the same time. Seriously, though, right now on YouTube, if you want to go and watch it anytime you like, it is Plank of the Week. Here's a clip. Where is it? Where is it? This is nowhere near as good as my bookie book. Who's this Jesus fella I keep reading about? Trouble with this book, it's too f***ing long. This is going to go viral, this, isn't it? Me. That's not actually a clip from Plank of the Week. That's to promote Clamp of the Week. That is me, if you didn't guess, being Russell Brand, being interviewed by Piers Morgan. But Plank of the Week, it's on where we search for the biggest idiot of the last 7 days. Always a very difficult close-run race. That's on YouTube as we speak. Anytime you want, have a look. It is brilliant. Right, let's go back to my guest, barrister and social commentator Stephen Barrett. Let me ask you this. Let's talk about politics for a second. We did this story a little earlier. Anyone but Ange. The Prime Minister, I can't go into too many details about the local elections because we're in that thing, PERDA, where we're not really allowed to discuss them, but I think I'm allowed to say May the 7th is not likely to be a brilliant day for Labour. They're going to lose a hell of a lot of seats, and we know that upon that disaster there are contenders on manoeuvres to defenestrate Starmer and take over. Wes Streeting is one. We hear he's got the parliamentary numbers to mount a challenge after the local elections, but also Angela Rayner, the favourite of the Labour masses, the Labour Party members. She got drunk on Monday in the Strangers Bar. I don't care about that. I don't care if she likes a drink. But there's a very serious possibility that that woman could become our Prime Minister, possibly within 2 weeks. What I worry about her, and I stressed this earlier, it's not because she's working class, it's not because she's not educated, it's not because she didn't go to public school or Oxford University, it's not because she left school at 16. That doesn't make you stupid. Very intelligent people can leave the school. Educational qualifications don't make you intelligent. So it's nothing to do with that. It's nothing to do with her background, but I do fear she simply does not have the intellectual bandwidth to be our leader.
Well, at the moment, I mean, I just say I like to be very clear on this. I'm actually a big Angela Rayner fan. And I have been since she did an interview with Fraser Nelson in The Spectator many years ago, when I went into reading that article hoping that she looked like a clown, and she came out of it looking like she actually thinks about things quite deeply. And has
the next drink.
Well, and I have no problem
that
with
was a low blow, folks. Sorry.
Someone who like
I don't mind that she has a drink.
No, I really look. Where I'm an Anglo-Saxon, you can't exactly get us away from
totally
drink.
Right.
But so I was genuinely persuaded on her, and I've been persuaded ever since. And I think the problem is, if it's Wes Streeting, you're just going to have like a younger version of Keir Starmer. Okay, that's all you're going to get. The machine is currently ungovernable. Now, will Angela have the sheer chutzpah and the gall to reform the system, to fix everything? I don't know, but she's much more likely to not just become an immediate pet of the civil servants. The problem we've had since Rishi Sunak, Keir Starmer, Kemi Badenoch would be the same thing, I'm afraid. You know, all of these people just want the civil service to govern whilst they go on the telly. The problem is that we are living through literal proof that the civil service can't govern. Okay, they can't govern. They don't know what they're doing. So, the civil service just destroyed the rental market. They were going to do it if the Tories won the election, because the Tories were supporting this renters' rights nonsense, and then the Labour Party won, and they agreed with the civil service. So the civil service destroyed the rental market. That's a real thing that is really happening that will ruin people's lives.
Indeed, but I mean. But is she bright enough? Is she across the detail?
Well, I don't know, but the thing about a political leader who may not be that intellectually heavyweight is that they tend to realise it and then surround themselves with better people. So I want to know who's around her, who's she relying on.
By the way, I mean, culturally, I'd love it. I have huge reservations about her. I don't think she would be up to the job, but per se, I love the idea of a working class woman who left school at 16, hasn't got any qualifications, doesn't even know where Oxford and Cambridge are. I like and didn't go to public school. That would be extremely refreshing. It is about time we had a Prime Minister like that. I'm so sick of this public school Oxford syndrome. But I don't think she's the one, but you think she could be okay?
It's not like they're offering us a smorgasbord of brilliant options, is it, Kev?
That much we can agree on.
I mean, Lord Maurice Glassman, who I've had a huge amount of time for, speaks in favour of Shabana Mahmood. I mean, I'm afraid, having failed on the small boats, I don't think that is in any way credible.
I think she is overrated in the extreme.
Yeah, but I think this is what Starmer does. I think he gives the people's jobs to destroy their political careers. So he made her Home Secretary to destroy her political career. And I think... And there's talk now of him making Angela Chancellor. Well, if she's full enough to take Chancellor, then her political career is over.
I'd rather she was Prime Minister than Chancellor.
Yeah, exactly, say no.
One last point I'm going to ask you. Tony Blair, the Tony Blair Institute for the Mentally Insane. No, it's not called that, isn't it? It's just called the Tony Blair Institute. He has announced, our former Prime Minister today, he seems to think somehow he still is the Prime Minister, that we should axe the state old age pension and replace it with some kind of investment system or something. There are two things I want to say about this. If you were the Prime, it's all right for him to say that, but if he was Prime Minister, he wouldn't say that in a month of Sundays. Can you imagine what old people are feeling about that? What on earth is he talking about? Why is he saying this? And why? Can't he just shut his trap? He's over. Shut up, Blair.
Well, he's not over because he was very, very clever in his time in office, and we need to talk more about this. He basically embedded himself into the British system, into our constitution, into our entire system of law. He's the first to meddle with the constitution, and all of it just embeds his ideas and made it almost impossible for the Conservatives to do anything. Although if they'd actually tried, they could have succeeded. The country can be fixed. I never fall into complete despair. But fixing the country is now incredibly complicated. That's why when people are glib about it, I get a bit grumpy. But I also get a bit grumpy at people on the right who buy into this nonsense argument. Our public pensions are absolutely rubbish. Private pensions, the Labour Party's about to steal them all and make them invest in things which are woke, which will make them no money and probably go bust. So the private, and Gordon Brown already heavily destroyed private pensions. So a lot of people are reliant on the public pension, and the public pension is rubbish. It's bad. I feel guilty that there are old people who rely on this pathetic pension.
What is it, about 180
it's pathetic.
quid a week?
It's just pathetic. It's not enough. It's not enough. And what I want to do...
Well, at least it's something. Blair wants to axe it. He says it's unaffordable.
Well, this is nonsense, and this is just identity politics where they set one group against each other. And at the moment, the system is so rubbish for young people, it absolutely is, that the young people are rightly angry, and so they just go, ha, you should be angry at the pensioners, as if the little pensioners are in any way a threat to them. What we need to do is free the economy, deregulate, get rid of Blair entirely, burn him out of the system as necessary, and then we will experience an economic boom at the point at which paying for these pathetically low pensions will probably be able to double it.
Well said. Stephen, fantastic to have you on the show again. You've been away too long, so coming again next week. Is that a promise?
Maybe.
Yeah. The answer's yes. Well, anyway, as soon as you can. It's great.
As soon as I can.
Great to have you on the show. And by the way, folks, if you're wondering when it was that this great country of ours started to go seriously wrong, look no further than Tony Blair. He's the one who ruined this country, and we are... not benefiting from the effects of his government still today. That's why we're all going wrong. Stephen Barrett, great to have you on the show. Let's go to break. We'll take some calls next. 03444 991,000. In fact, we'll take them for the rest of the show. So let's talk. It's good to talk on Talk. That's next. Stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Here's the second show that I would like to plug. It's my other show, What Just Happened. That is on Talk Live tonight at 9 p.m. Also, tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. on YouTube. You can get it from 10 a.m. Saturday morning. Tomorrow morning, you can watch it any time you like. If you're watching tonight, or you're listening on the radio and you haven't got vision, by all means just listen, because it's very radio friendly, and you would at least avoid having to watch my ugly mug. But apart from that, you can watch it tonight live on Talk at 9 p.m. Here's a clip.
Yeah, Gaza says you can almost smell the stench of racism from Ash Gould. He looks and sounds like a bullying tramp.
The stench of racism. He looks and sounds like a bullying tramp. I mean, are there any tramps who are
racist bullying tramps? You don't get many of them anymore.
But the bullying tramps, they're a dying breed.
Yeah, there's not enough.
You're the last.
I'm here for them.
The last of a dying breed. The last of the great
tramps.
Bullying tramps. Ash Gould. Yeah, well, that's Ash Gould. Samara Gill there as well. Very funny moment. That is part of the show that goes live on Talk tonight, straight after Peter Cardwell's show, 9 p.m. What Just Happened. And then, as I say, tomorrow morning, as of 10 o'clock, anytime you like, on YouTube for the rest of all time. Can't recommend it highly enough. And finally, my final plug is Virgin Radio's TFI is on Channel 4 tonight. Chris Evans' great new revival of his famous show back in the 90s. That goes on Channel 4 tonight at 11:05. Guests include KSI, Peter Capaldi and Lenny Henry. So that's TFI tonight on Channel 4 at 11:05 p.m. That's the end of the plugs. Let's go to the phones. Let's talk to Jason in Wiltshire. Hi, Jason.
Evening. Sorry, you're not Ian, are you? You're Kevin.
Yes,
Sorry.
that's right. It's easier to see the difference if you look closely. What would you like to say, Jason?
Yeah, obviously, Big Ange. I like to say as well, what's just happened when I've heard that he wants to, be the leader of the Labour Party. Now, wouldn't that be nice? We've got a foul-mouthed person who's got the decorum of a sledgehammer, somebody who cannot handle their drink, somebody that does not know, even when you go to a solicitor to buy another house, are you buying a second property? Please tick this box. How on earth is she going to be able to run the country? It's going to be a car crash if it happens.
It is an extraordinary prospect, isn't it? And it's a very real prospect. I mean, next week, after the local elections, Labour are likely to be in disarray. And we know that there are several candidates on manoeuvres waiting, if they can, to kick Keir Starmer out and to take over the reins of the country. And one of them, of course, we know is West Streeting is one. Andy Burnham keeps making the right noises, but I don't know why people bother. He hasn't even got a seat in the House of Commons. So he's not really at the races in all of this, but West Streeting is. But Angela Rayner is probably the front runner. It is no exaggeration to say that if you and I were talking this time next month, Jason, we might be talking in a Britain run by the Prime Minister Angela Rayner, and I think that's frightening.
I really hope it doesn't happen. I mean,
I do too.
How is it going to look? These lovely state visits and everything else, and you've got that there. You can just see it, can't you? It's like I said, I don't want to stereotype, but you get those sort of chavs that you see walking around. That is. Angela Rayner is the prime picture.
Well, not fair to call her a chav, and she. I mean, I don't mind if she got drunk on Monday. I don't mind if she gets drunk now and again. I don't mind if she has a few drinks. I don't mind if she, is not full of decorum. I don't mind any of that. I'm just not sure she is a capable enough politician to be the Prime Minister of this country.
No, she probably isn't. And I'm waiting for you to say as well, you also don't mind her sort of forgetting to pay 50 grand's worth of stamp duty. That's the only one you've missed off there, Kev.
Well, she needs to sort that out. I mean, I do mind that. I mean, you know what I mean. I mean, what is the?
Yeah,
there's not a problem. There should not be a problem with her being working class, a little rough around the edges, enjoying a drink. There's no problem with any of that. The stamp duty, the tax problem, that is a problem. We hear she's going to get that sorted out, but of course that's a problem. That's why she got sacked, or that's why she had to resign as Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary. So we know that was a problem. But as I say, for me, the problem is this. I don't think she's up to the job. I don't think she's got the ability.
No, but again, the bloke we've got at the moment hasn't got the ability, but I think I would sooner have the bloke that we've got now. Is they do say about the grass being greener on the other side is because they spray certain things over it.
Yeah, well, Tim Stanley on The Telegraph said that he would rather have a drunken Angela Rayner than a sober Keir Starmer as our Prime Minister. It's a very good phrase, but I can't go along with it, I'm afraid. I would actually rather have Keir Starmer than her, and I can't say worse than that. Jason, very good call. Thank you. Should we go to break? Take more calls when we come back. Stick around.
Sent us a picture that made me feel so ashamed. We look like hoarders.
Chris Marshall!
Yeah, I'm actually recovering from an accident right now.
You've landed loose today, haven't you?
Yeah, don't shake the arm, Chris, too much.
You're with Danny Boyle, who's like the maddest director ever. He's got so much energy. He's like you.
Starmer fueling anti-Semitism?
I don't think he's doing anything to deal with anti-Semitism. The attempt to gaslight the British people and the Jewish community is appalling.
This has to stop. It's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Elaine sent me a text. Hi, Kev. I just saw your clip for Plank of the Week. You look fab in that wig. Thank you, Elaine. Great show as always today. I tune in every day, definitely when I can. Have a good weekend, you and yours. It's from Alison in County Antrim. Same to you, Alison. Have a great weekend. Thank you very much for your kind words. This is from Ian about the Falklands. He said, I remember the famous quote by one of the journalists on board the aircraft carrier describing the Harrier jets. I counted them all out and I counted them all back in again. Yeah, Ian, that was Brian Hanrahan. Sadly, the late Brian Hanrahan. I think he died 10 years ago or so. He was the BBC reporter. He did that on the land. I remember him. I remember standing there and the jets going past. Incredible reporting. That was during the days when the BBC did fantastic journalism as opposed to what it does now, biased journalism. This is Barry. He says, having done the Falklands myself, I assume, Barry, you mean you served there? Thank you for that. Let's say, having served in the Falklands myself, says Barry, I don't think there's any chance of the Argentines being successful a second time around militarily. The islands are far better equipped to defend against attack, and not forgetting the Argentine Navy remains quite incapable of offensive operations. That's interesting, Barry. Yeah, you're right. They did very much build up the defences of the Falklands after they were left so exposed back in 1982. But we certainly won't be able to send a fleet down, a task force like we did last time. 40 ships. We haven't got 40 ships. There you go. This is Brian. If Argentina attacks the Falklands, then Starmer should invoke Article 4 and bring NATO into the fray. Yeah, that's an interesting point. I wonder if the Falklands would count as part of NATO. I'm not sure that they would, but because it's an adjunct. I'm not sure it's actually part of Britain. But anyway, let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Melanie in Staffordshire. Hello, Melanie. What would you like to say? You want to talk about Angela Rayner? What would you like to say?
Kevin. Yes, please. I think most people probably do agree with the fact that maybe she probably isn't the best person for, to take on the role of Prime Minister. But to be fair, there have been other people in the past, like Margaret Thatcher received advice so she could make herself appear to be more approachable with the speeches and so on. We had Princess Diana had advice regarding a sense of style, which early on wasn't particularly good, and she became a glamour model. Tony Blair asked Margaret Thatcher, even though she had been on a different political party.
So what you're saying, Melanie, is what you're saying, Melanie, is that Angela Rayner, if she became Prime Minister, could be trained into being, shall we say, a little less rough around the edges.
Absolutely. I think it does. I think the problem is, and I think this has always been the issue, is that I do think, and I hate to say this, but I do think you have to work a little bit extra hard if you come from a working class background.
I think you're right about that, and that's all right. Look,
public school, you just walk in.
I agree with that. I mean, Westminster, Whitehall is still infested with public school kids who went to Oxford or Cambridge, and I'd love it. I'd love it if a woman, an unmarried mother who left school at 16 with no qualifications became the Prime Minister of this country. It's about time. I'd love it. I just don't think she's the one. I just don't think.
No, I agree. Actually. Yeah. I agree. I admire her in a way for considering.
I know what you mean. I mean, she's done well to get as far as she has, definitely. Yeah. Good for her, but I don't think she's up to the top job.
I think you've got to know your limitations, haven't you?
Yes, that's what Clint Eastwood said.
Really?
A man's got to know his limitations, so does a woman. Melanie, great to talk to you. Excellent call. Thank you. Call me again. Melanie in Staffordshire there. Let's talk to the brilliant Jill in Cornwall. Hello, Jill. Hi, Jill.
All right. Well, my goodness me. Who would make a good leader for the Labour Party? Another party, not the Labour Party. I'm sorry, but they are the biggest threat and the biggest enemy of this country. They've done nothing.
Yeah, they've done nothing since the horror in Golders Green a couple of days ago. They've done nothing, and that's indicative of this party. They don't do anything about anything. They haven't done anything about the migrant crisis. The migrant crisis is importing mass anti-Semitism, and this government just looks at it and does sod all.
And what they've done is also they've made a situation where I can't say who I like and who I don't, without somebody calling me some historism, and so they're making people shut up as well. I'm fed up with them. I don't care whether they like what I say. I think that they are the worst thing that has happened to this country. And Keir Starmer, he could have got off his blinking backside, walked around the corner, and supported the Jewish
in Golders Green. That's what I've been saying, Jill.
Exactly.
When he went, that cowardly little weasel didn't have the guts to show his face. He just sat behind his limo, darkened windows, got out straight into a building. He never spoke to anyone low. An absolute disgrace. He's a coward.
All he does is keep going to meetings, keep going abroad, keep talking about what he's got. He does nothing. And I can't think, I'm sorry, but don't ask me to pick another leader, because I don't think...
I was going to ask you that. If you had to, out of this shower, this rabble, Labour, who would you go for? West Streeting? You don't want to do this, do you?
No, I don't want to say any of them.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with you. Yeah.
I really can't. I think the worst thing that happened was when they got in and they've done nothing at all to improve this country. They've created a bigger a group of people now who are so angry with the situation, and what irritates the life out of me is that we're paying them. We're paying them to do this.
I know, it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace. Jill, calm down now and have a lovely weekend. Call me next week. It's always good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Jill in Cornwall. I just want to read a quick message. This is from Becca. And she's talking about, earlier we did this, the illiberal bans by 61 councils across the country on shouting and swearing in the streets, staring. I love that one. Just make it illegal to stare. But Becca says, if I take my children to the park, I don't want a group swearing like sailors. People have lost all respect and decorum on how to act now. Look, Becca, I take your point. But the point is do we really want to make swearing and shouting illegal? We want to discourage people from doing it, particularly in front of children. But I don't want to make it illegal. That is illiberal. That is illiberal. That's an attack on freedom. It's an attack on basic human behaviour. Sometimes people shout, sometimes people swear. That cannot be against the law, and yet it is in 61 councils. And so is staring. Come on. Let's go back to the phones. Peter Cardwell will be in just a second to tell you what he's got lined up for your entertainment tonight. But first, let's talk to Scott in Nottingham. Hello, Scott.
Kevin, hello, how are you?
Now, you want to put me right. I said that this is the first time Polanski has ever apologised for anything, but you say this is his second apology. What was the first?
The first one was a couple of years ago when he got caught in an undercover sting operation. If you paid him money, he could hypnotise you and make you...
Hypnotits. Yeah, that's right. You're absolutely right, yeah.
And providing you were a woman that didn't have a penis, because he doesn't quite know those either.
Well, he hasn't apologised for that, but he did, as you quite rightly, he had a job conning women that he could enlarge their breasts but through the power of hypnotism, which of course was a load of old crap. But that's what he did for a living, and I think he has kind of apologised for that. Yes, you're right. Not a great bedrock for a political career, I would suggest, Scott.
Not one that virtue signals for the Green Party the way they do.
Yeah, no, exactly. Listen, Scott, thank you for that. You're absolutely right. I should have remembered it. Thank you for a good call. Call me again. Scott in Nottingham. Peter Cardwell's in the studio. Hi, Pete.
Hi, how are you doing? How are things?
I'm all right. What about you?
Another dramatic day. I think I've had a much better day than Zach Polanski because he's been hauled over the coals, and rightly so. Starmer has slammed him. Israel has called him an extremist, and now he's apologised for his ludicrous retweeting of that suggestion that those police officers who were wrestling the suspect to the ground. Well, yeah, he said it was police brutality. Absolutely outrageous.
By the way, the more I look at that video, and by the way, if anyone's worried about why they were kicking him in the head, it was deliberately to disorient him because they thought
he had a knife.
Worse than that,
he just stabbed two people.
They thought he had a huge backpack that they thought were full of explosives. Very brave of them. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I mean, very, very good point to make. We'll also talk about anyone but Ange. I know you've been talking about that today. Tony Blair says the state pension should go.